Bonnie?
We can start now.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. It's a little after 6:30. We're the Graham Planning and Zoning Board. We're here tonight to hear the city's business. If you're here to speak on any agenda item tonight, you will be allowed to speak. When at the appropriate time, I will call you and I will ask on each individual item if there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak. Just raise your hand and we'll call you to the podium. All right, Cameron. Yeah, there we go. I was looking for my agenda.
I got it.
No, I got it. Mr. Crispin had it. I'm gonna do a roll call of the members tonight. Mr. Bailey,
Present.
Mr. Wooten,
Present.
Mr. Hupines here. Mr. Crispin,
Here.
Mr. Bias,
Present.
and Chair Dean Ward's here. Okay, if everyone would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation. Liberty and justice.
Cameron, y'all got the air conditioner on?
Thank you, Chairman. Just turned on. It had to be turned down, just turned on.
Just turn it up.
It's on.
All right, I'll entertain a motion for last May's minutes. I don't think we've had a meeting since May. I hope everyone's had a chance to view them and accuracy, and I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
I'll hear a second.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Cameron, let's proceed forward.
Thank you, Chair Ward. All right, so first, on our new business, we have action item A. Just a little background summary of the project. This is a request to rezone 14.03 acres of property from R12 and R18 medium and low density residential to CR conditional residential for the purpose of constructing up to 72 two-story townhomes nearly over on Hanford Road. Nearly all of the land nearby is zoned and used for single-family residential with either R12 or R18 zoning. The proposed density with the 72 townhomes on the 14 acres of land is nearly 5 units per acre of the total lot area being used. This property is listed on the future land use map as suburban residential, which according to the future land use plan suggests the appropriate density of the areas between 3 to 6 dwelling units per acre. The future land use plan also alludes to the suburban residential district's principal uses are predominantly detached single-family homes, new neighborhoods, may include a range of duplexes, townhomes, and small-scale multifamily dwellings of 12 units. With the update to the previous conditional rezoning request from the applicant, they have indeed decrease the density of the lot by utilizing the full area of the property past the creek location. And that's all I have in regards to the staff report is now.
Thank you. Okay. Open the public here now, and we'll hear from the petitioner.
Thank you, Chair Ward. Nice to see all of you again. Amanda Hodiern. My offices are at 804 Green Valley Road in Greensboro, North Carolina. And I'm here tonight on behalf of technically the property owner, Ms. Etta Warren, but also the contract purchaser and would-be developer of this property should this rezoning attempt be successful. And that is a sole purpose entity called WBY4 LLC, the principal of which is Will Yearns. His primary consumer-facing entity is Granville Homes, based out of the Triad, and is a Triad-based developer of residential communities all across the state. Mr. Urans is with me this evening. He's here for any questions or discussion that we need going forward. And we also have with us our civil engineer and designer, Aiden Stolspitz. He's been responsible for our TRC efforts and can help with any of our technical and design questions going forward. So before we get into it, I want to acknowledge we are back again. This is something you've seen before. So I want to approach this evening, with an understanding and an acknowledgement of where we've been and where we are since then, rather than treating you and treating this like it's the first time you've seen it. So I know Mr. Huffine's new since we were here last, but I know Mr. Huffine, so I know he's reviewed everything and is up to speed, and I'm going to cover the basics. So if there's anything that I've left out, please don't hesitate to let me know. So a brief case history. We began working on this back late last summer with city staff, just working through ideas of form and how this might work. We submitted a formal application late last fall and worked through the TRC process last winter, eventually getting a TRC approval of our previous efforts back in February of 2021. Excuse me, those dates are wrong, 22. I apologize. This year's going fast, but it's not that fast. So 22, excuse me. And then had a community meeting in March, appeared before you all in March of earlier this year, ultimately received conditional approval after we had a good review and discussion of the project here, went on to city council and had a denial of the request after a lot of discussion and feedback that we felt like, allowed us to regroup, refocus and apply that feedback to see if this is something we could keep working with and if it still had any possibility in it. So that's what we've been doing. That was in April of this year. It's now August. So from April to August, we've been working with those comments. Appreciate y'all's efforts and of course the city council's efforts in being forthcoming with your thoughts and your insights and your feedback on this, because that does allow us to understand what we can do differently to make this a better fit. And we think we've done that. I think for reasons we'll get into more in a minute, I think last time we were here, we established that, yes, this makes sense as a land use, residential in this location. That's kind of a no-brainer given what a highly desirable and successful residential area this is for Graham. It's right along that Main Street corridor with all kinds of businesses, goods and services, supports, ample access to employment, both in town and out of town, being right there at the interstate access. So we understand why people want to live here. We understand that this is an area that perhaps, yes, could benefit from some different housing type of optionality. There's a lot of single family homes here. There's a lot of people who can be in this area or have been in this area, but there's more who want to be. And there's different types of home buyers who want to be. So that's what we're exploring with this petition. I think we got real close last time. And of course, you all were able to approve it conditionally, and we did adopt all those conditions with our effort that we took to council last time. But what I would say where we got last time is land use, land form, compatibility with your comprehensive plan, furthering the goals and objectives of the city. I think we established those items. We're down to the tweaking and the finesse on it, if you will, as to what makes this land form and land use, which is theoretically a good idea and can work here, what makes it able to actually work specifically on the ground. And so, like I said, we appreciate everyone's feedback and helping us understand that last time. And we feel like we've applied that well. And we are coming back now with a way that this land use and this land form can work in this location. So we've come back, we've got a new plan, a revised plan, not totally new. And we've again been back through your TRC process. Understand you guys have been sort of revamping and redoing how you guys utilize your TRC process so that you all have great information when you're here at this point of the process being asked to make these decisions. So we're happy to be able to have come out the other side of that process with a TRC approved plan for you so that you all know that this does and meet the rigors of your development standards and your technical requirements. We go to the next slide, please. Some noteworthy plan elements. I know you've got the full plan in your packet. I know you've got staff who's vetted this along with the rest of your TRC. But again, as I said at the top of my comments, I want to focus on what's changed and how we've evolved. So what we have now is a dwelling unit type that your code refers to as a two-family home. You might also call it a twin home. So this is not a row of townhomes as we had last time. This is just sets of two little twin homes. They're all one story this time. Our dwelling units, as you heard from staff, are spread throughout the entire property. Before we were focused on the front side of the creek, trying to create a bifurcation between a good pocket of open space and keeping the development at the front of the property. But this time we've spread it throughout the entire property to help with that massing that people were uncomfortable with. And then we've got recreational space. We spent a lot of time on this with you guys last time. Recreational space that's intentional, thoughtfully spread throughout the site and highly accessible. You don't have to cross a creek and then meander through the woods to have recreation opportunity anymore. So these are some of the ways we'll talk about them more in a minute of how we feel like we've been able to listen and internalize and incorporate the feedback that we got from both this board and the city council. We did, of course, go back through the community outreach process this time. We wanted to let people know that we were coming back again. And also this request affects different people. Since we have expanded the developable area across the creek, we're closer to other properties that perhaps didn't feel like they were close enough to worry about this last time. So we wanted to make sure that everybody understood that difference this time. So we sent out another letter. We sent out 146 letters. That's about, let's see, 5 times 30, that's about 146 more than were required by your, 146 was the total. 24 were on your, the city's list. So we do that to make sure that we're not just, robotically applying a radius, but we're actually looking and being thoughtful about who gets this letter, if somebody's neighbor got it and they didn't. And we try to eliminate any of those types of conflicts and make sure that anybody who would have an interest in this knows about it. We had our informational meeting last week on the 11th. We had it in person here in town at a church local to the site, and we had 4 people in attendance. Which was, I'll say, notably less than we had last time around. And I don't know if that's a function of because they'd seen it before and felt like they knew, if it was a function of the weather, I don't know. But that was our attendance, and I didn't have any outside calls or emails. And my info was provided in the letter. But we had a good discussion at the meeting. Mostly, as I'm doing with you, I focused on what happened, what's changed, how we're back, why we're back. And the main discussion points we had were just about, frankly, about traffic in the area globally, current existing traffic conditions, not things that were going to be created by this site, but of course, existing issues and thoughts about how this site plays into that. So here we have sort of a summary snapshot of what the proposal is. And I really think this kind of provides for you a photographic synopsis of what's being proposed this time around and how it's different. So you see the layout at the top. You see, of course, the units spread from front to back all the way across the site. And this creates, a deeper setback off of Hanford Road, which was talked about last time. It creates less of a massing of all the units up front. You don't have the rows of 4 or 5 units connected like last time. Which creates smaller footprints, smaller building structures. And you have the pockets of green space that you see throughout the site. That intentional depth off of Hanford that I mentioned. You have another good break at Nina Drive, where we've taken up one of those quadrants with our mail kiosk. It's a nice substantial area there where we can provide parking spots so people can pull off the road, get out of their car, get the mail, get back in without impeding traffic flow on the main street. And then those other 4 quadrants are just open. And this can be places where we could establish a community garden, or could just be a passive field for, kids to play tag, or, folks to walk their dog, that sort of thing. Of course, progressing through the site, we then have our stream corridor that's a significant feature environmentally and also aesthetically. Creates a nice break in the site, creates a nice walking opportunity for people. And then down at the back of the site, we've also left some open space along that cul-de-sac, just to, again, create breathability and open space opportunities for everyone throughout the entire length of the property. And then you've got our form for building footprints here and elevations below. Again, a lot of discussion last time on the form, the actual structural form of this land use and how it needs to be compatible. Yes, housing optionality is good. Yes, being inviting and presenting an opportunity for more types of home buyers is good, but let's do that in a way that fits in the area. So we took that feedback and we've addressed it in two ways. We've got the one story, which we heard a lot about before, for two reasons. One, form. We don't want to be overshadowing the one-story properties around us. Takes care of that. And two, functionality. If we're talking about housing optionality, if we're talking about serving the needs of the community, we heard a lot about, let's get some one-story options for people who want to age in place, for people who want to stay in the area but don't want to go upstairs every night, or have to maintain so much house or so much yard. So this type of footprint and building plan much more comports to that type of buyer. This is a floor plan that you can live all on one floor. We've also got several different elevations here that will help create a uniqueness to the streetscape and give it that organic character, so you don't feel like you're just seeing a ticky-tacky row of the same thing over and over again. There's several different skins or stylizations that the builder can put on this type of home. And that's also, it's driven a lot by consumer choice, but it's also somewhat helped along. For instance, if you come in and want housing option A, but the two lots, before and after you have already chosen that, you'll be kindly directed to different lots where you can apply housing option A. So the builder is able to inventory that and make sure that differentiality is maintained throughout the street. This would be an HOA maintained community, same as last time. And that would include all exterior maintenance. So again, trying to create things that speak to those different demographics and those different options that people might be looking for. If you don't want to mow your grass, this is the place you can do that, but still have a very nice manicured looking neighborhood. Same with signage, same with maintaining the mail kiosks and all those little open space areas we've talked about, amenities that go in it, whether it be a dog park or a gazebo, whatever it may be, as the demographic and particularizations of the plan come together. There's an HOA to take care of all that. So the city knows, other residents know who to call and who can take care of any problem that comes along. So that's what's changed. We're excited about this. We think the feedback really did get us to a better place that we hope is more compatible with the surrounding area, that does provide more of that option that Graham buyers and current residents will be looking for, or maybe are looking for in the area. And we feel like we've done it, without having to deviate from the things that were good about the plan last time. We still have a nice HOA controlled and maintained community. We still have a property that creates housing options in the area that aren't currently there. And we still have, a project that frankly is feasible for a developer. And we can be able to meet these different, types of feedback that we heard, come back with this different product, and it still is a win-win, something that we can do and make happen and be excited about and feel confident that this will be a successful community for Graham. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions and, stand by if we need to do those after hearing from some other folks as well. Thank y'all.
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you for listening to the concerns of the city council. And you've pretty much done what they've asked you to do. My question is, you've got the open spaces, the creek crossing. Are there any other street trees planned for the development? I didn't see any in the renditions.
Well, certainly. So We try not to, and your staff does a good job of not letting us do any conditions that are redundant to your underlying ordinance. So certainly this is not meant to supersede or transpose anything that would already be required to do. We're simply here trying to illustrate and create a binding plan of what, is additional to the ordinance. So yes, your street tree plantings required
Okay.
under your ordinance, all of that we'll have to do and we'll certainly do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not sure who to address the question to. What is our street tree ordinance on this matter?
Cameron?
So in regards to our street trees, I believe it's a 5-foot buffer along the street line, which is along the lines of 2 to 3 per 100 linear feet, I believe off the top of my head. And that's on, the front of abutting properties that abut the street area right there. So it's a general aspect of it along those lines is what's required by our ordinance.
If I may, so obviously our frontage along Hanford Road is pretty narrow. And we do have to maintain sight triangles and the ability for safe turning. So you're probably not going to see a lot of street tree from what he just said. However, that's also where we're going to have our entrance monumentation and our, sort of community identity, placemaking, any sense of presence that you have outside of the neighborhood itself is going to be on Hanford Road. So that's where you'll see a lot of, planting and landscaping done that's outside of your streetscape ordinance that you might imagine around, monument signs and corner lots and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I wasn't looking for towering trees along Hanford Road. I was looking for trees in the development.
Oh, okay, so it is a public street. That's still correct, right? Yes. It is a public street, so we will also have to comply with your planting
Okay.
requirements along whatever that street ends up being called as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pass any further?
The ordinance you just read to us, Cameron,
Yes, sir.
Mr. West, is that for Hanford Road or would that be for this development street?
That one was in particular to Hanford Road, but if the street leading into Hanford Road is considered to be that public drive as well, it may adhere. I'm trying to look it up right now just to be completely, let's see. Certain here. Because a lot what of our ordinance speaks to is regard to these green zone areas. It doesn't necessarily list the length in which however many be planted. Let's see. Let me keep on looking into it and I'll get back to you here in a second.
My concern is as a person who walks around Graham a lot, in this heat wave we've just been having. Trees are real nice to have when you're walking up and down the street and trying to enjoy the area. And it makes it a
Understood.
much more pleasing,
Yeah.
livable experience.
Understood. And I will say we do have, a program where we come in and there's trees in front lawns and planted throughout. I don't know if Will happens to know what that program actually is, but certainly we do have some of our own, whatever the ordinance requires, some of our own, just for the reasons you're stating. We also want the neighborhood to be nice. The developers want home buyers to be attracted to it. So adding street trees is part of a builder program.
Okay,
Or
thank you.
rather front yard trees, I guess. I don't know that they would be in the right of way.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Wooten?
Yes, just, can you give us some information about the individual homes themselves, square footage, number of bedrooms? I'm assuming 2-car garage, number of baths, anything and everything about the units themselves. Forgive me, I didn't see anything in the packet about that.
Well, and that's on purpose because we try to keep it to the required land use elements, but certainly conversationally, I'm happy to tell you about those. And I might call Will up to do that because he's been more engaged in what this particular builder would want to do here. I believe these are under 2,000 square foot footprints, I believe. I know that they have the entire living space is on the first floor, bedroom, bathroom, master, extra bedrooms. I believe that this particular builder can, if they want to do an optional, bedroom and bath upstairs in case, which would equate to a half story. It would all fit within the roof lines that you see here. So it wouldn't mean anything goes higher. But that would just be in case, you want to have space if you've got a visiting, kid from out of town or something. That would be an option on. Let's see, number of car garage. I'll have to defer to Will on that. I'm not sure exactly which one they would do here. There's a lot of different ways they can arrange these, and some of it, we don't always know at this level. We try to make sure that we can come up with something outwardly facing that's satisfactory to the community, and then from there, the inside, as you can imagine, is really pretty malleable. So if there's something in particular that you think would work or not work here, happy to hear it, because it's all behind the elevation. It's pretty easy to make things happen.
So when you say under 2,000 square feet, are we a little under 2,000, or we're talking about 1,500 square feet? Just want to get a general idea about the size of each of the sides that.
1,800, a pretty fair average. Yeah.
I mean, they range.
And again, so I'd say 1,800, it would be a good kind of starting point approximation, but they do range, and it would also depend on the different choices that somebody makes internal.
And multiple floor plans.
Yes.
Are they pretty much the same floor plan?
There's multiple floor plans. There's not 1,000 different floor plans, but yes, there's different floor plans. But again, the primary components are that you're always going to have that total living space on the first floor. So within that, within a footprint and within those prescriptions, as many ways as you can do that, I guess.
More questions?
And you are going to continue running the sidewalk all the way around the property front side.
Sidewalks throughout. Yes, sir.
And I presume when we were talking about 2 stories, there's no 2 stories that are going to be built on the right-hand side of the road that adjoin the property that backs up to the subdivision off of Monroe Holt,
There's no 2 stories at all.
second story bedrooms.
So that's just an option to finish out within the roof lines you see here. So I would, it's not a 2-story at all. With the building, the proposed condition that was on the application limiting us to 2 stories, that's because we didn't yet have, we weren't this far along when I had to submit this and create those conditions. I just wanted to create at least some maximum comfort zone for people to know it's not going to go to 3 stories or 3.5. But now we've been able to hone in on that even more, and there are no 2 stories. There would be an option to build out within what in the industry would be considered a 1-story structure to finish out a, upper level bedroom and bathroom, but there's no 2-story heights.
I understand, and going back from the previous time that you guys was here, some of the concerns that I remember was the 2-story structures, or presuming someone would be looking down into the lower subdivision below.
Mhm.
And when we start talking 2 stories, even if it's 1.5 stories, are we talking about you're going to build a bonus room over the garage and that's where the bedroom's going to be? So it's going to be on the front side of the house, or could it potentially be looking out over the backside?
I think unfortunately, that's just not information that we have at this date. We're trying to keep this at a land use type of discussion before we hone in on all those final details. But again, if that's something that, if that's just something that's not going to be allowed or not going to be appropriate, I think that we can hear about that. But I would encourage us to, stay under the statutory regulations, rezoning considerations of single family development, which does not allow us to consider that sort of thing. We have broached it here in an attempt to be responsive to feedback that we heard last time, but we don't want to be so prescriptive that we get outside of those statutory requirements.
Thank you. Any further questions from the board for the petitioner at the present time? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now will be the time for, if anyone's here that would like to speak about this particular matter, now would be the time. Please state your name and address when you get up here for the record, please.
My name is Damian Mazouk. I live at 500 Nina Drive. I'm at the entrance of Nina Drive to the new subdivision that they're proposing, just opposite of the mailboxes that they're proposing to put in. So my house would be pretty much looking almost right at their mailbox right now. So my first question would be, can that be relocated to another quadrant? Or possibly to the back side of the layout? You know, that's one of my concerns. My other concerns, just like in the past, have always been the traffic flow, the amount of flow we're going to get through there. What can we do to slow people down to ensure that nobody will get hurt in the community? A lot of people walk the streets, a lot of kids playing out in the streets. We don't have sidewalks. So those options have been limited to us. Excuse me. The next question I have is again, my house. A few years back when I went to build a garage, I was told I couldn't build beyond a certain point because it was all wetlands back there. My concern is again, that is elevated property that flows down into my house. Everything works now, but when you start eliminating trees that are creating erosion issues and so forth and so on, what's going to happen there? Has anybody done any surveys or anything of that nature? Not to mention Mother Nature itself, all the turtles, the frogs, the this and that has that been taken into consideration? Those are some of my big concerns, and I don't know if anybody can answer them. The other one would be the width of the streets. Where is and I guess this would be my final one, where would be excess parking or overflow parking be? Is it on the streets? Are the streets wide enough to have excess parking? If you've got a short driveway, where are these vehicles going to be parked? I don't see anything here where would allow anybody to park a vehicle in the street. And yet, again, that's a fire lane, just like Nina Drive is now going to be a fire lane. So that has to be maintained as a fire lane, correct? I think. So those are my issues, folks. I do appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
I'd like one question for Mr. Bazooka. Were you one of the 4 that attended the meeting?
I walked in the door and I just looked at the plan and saw what happened. I didn't really, but yes, I did it.
Okay,
2 minutes.
thank,
Not very long.
thank you.
Okay, Crystal Drury, and this is my daughter, Mackenzie. We've lived on Monroe Holt for, over 9 years. We moved in January of 2014.
We're basically right after the speed limit sign. So
Yeah, as soon as you turn off of Pamford on the Monroe Holt, we're the second house on the right-hand side. My biggest, one of my biggest concerns, biggest thing I was scared to death of, even when we moved in that house 9 years ago, was the traffic coming down the road, how people take that curve off Monroe Holt. And when I tell you they're flying, I am not lying. I'm currently trying to work with some of the Graham police, to get them involved, to keep people from passing the school buses and, slowing down in the mornings and being more cautious with the mom standing outside with a 9-year-old and a big yellow school bus coming down the road, and they don't care. The only thing they see is the stop sign at the end of the road and they're flying.
I was in the bus and like someone flew past and hit the stop sign. So I was practically late for school because we had to deal with like the police stuff and getting everything. And it's not the first time that that's happened either. Granted, they didn't hit the school bus the rest of the times, but they've flown past it and not stopped.
I work diligent. She has an amazing bus driver. I have a 9-year-old son as well, and she's 15. So here in a little bit, she'll be driving, and that scares me to death because I know how hard it is for me to get in and out of that driveway, much less my 16-year-old to navigate the road trying to get in and out. My husband had a study done at the intersection years ago. At that point in time, they told us there just was not enough traffic to accommodate for a stop light to be there to control some of the traffic. And then when this goes into place, that's gonna skew traffic coming down our road, getting into the backside because they don't want to turn off a Hanford. I mean, I delivered pizzas for a long time. I worked at Papa John's for 21 years. I know how people think when they drive. And that's gonna be, oh, I'll just turn here and go on the back way, and I won't have to worry about going on Hanford. So that's going to, we also have somebody else here that's got to count on just how busy our road is. And anybody that's in Graham is completely familiar with it. Another thing I know he touched on, and I work at Terminex right now. And when I tell you we are battling mice and all these different things, because there's another development on the opposite side of us where they're going to do another 200 and something homes. And ever since they tore down that land, I have battled rats and mice for months. I can't put out a bird feeder. The rats are going to come. I mean, my husband pulls something out of the stove, and it's the biggest rat he ever saw, but it's just a mouse. But I mean, just disturbing something as a natural environment gets things like that on the move. So I completely agree with him, you know, when things get going. I actually stand out. I actually have to get out, stand at the end of the road, and I have to yell at adults at the end of the road and tell them to stop their car so I can get my 9-year-old on the bus. Granted, I don't do it quite as much with her because, you know, 15, she's old enough. She don't want her mama standing out there with her, so I get it. But at the end of the day, all they see is that stop sign. They don't see the yellow bus. And I mean, Mike's great. He turns his lights on as soon as he hits Hanford. But the folks coming down the road, they don't care. All they see is that stop sign at the end of the road, and I don't see anything else. So, I mean, for the safety of my kids and the other kids that are on that street, I mean, it's just not good. Another thing that, you know, was my question is when you ask the square footage, all we could get is an average. Well, our average is a pretty wide number. You know, what's the smallest size of square footage for home, and what's the largest, you know? I mean, and I mean, you see the pictures. It's a 2-story house. I mean, she went to kindergarten, we all went to school, and at the end of the day, that's a 2-story house. My house is built just like that. The top of it is a loft. I'm the only 2-story house on Monroe Holt Road through that one section on the right-hand side, and it is considered a 2-story house. My kids live upstairs, just like they were talking about. Where do you live at, baby?
Upstairs.
Okay, on the 2nd story. What, do you have a bathroom?
Upstairs.
Okay, there we go. So, I mean, you know, sometimes just things are obvious. That is not a 1-story floor plan. None of those are 1-story floor plans. Maybe it's a all floored attic area, but you know, then it needs to be perimeters. If it's going to be 1-story, that it can't be developed into livable space. So,
Thank you.
yes, sir.
Did you attend the meeting? You get the letter and attend the meeting?
No, sir. She had a volleyball meeting at Graham High School that night, and I could not.
Okay, thank you.
Barry Graham. I live on 500 Adil Court. And I just want to reiterate what they were saying. One of the things we were really worried about is that with Nina Drive coming through, the last meeting we went, you know, we came here, we talked about the traffic that was going to be going through. We were told that statistically speaking, that wouldn't be that bad. And now there's going to be mailboxes down through there. So I want to know whether or not we're going to be a throughway to go through these mailboxes and have all this traffic coming through. Another thing is, of course, yeah, the Monroe Holt and the Hanford Court traffic. the last time we were here, they were said that DOT handles that, and we're kind of wondering when is DOT going to get involved to take care of the demand of all these houses that are being built?
Have you contacted DOT yourself?
No, I have not.
You know, DOT really likes to hear from the community that it's
I'd be
affecting.
more than glad to call them.
Call the district engineer right down here in Graham.
I would be more than glad. Thank you.
Mr. Graham, did you attend the meeting?
I attended the meeting I was going to, and we got bad news from home and we had to cancel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Candy Plumley and I live on Monroe Holt Road. I've lived on Monroe Holt Road for 30 years. And yes, I did attend the meeting, so I'll go ahead and.
Thank you very much.
All right, so I asked a lot of questions in that meeting because I'm also a real estate agent. So I wanted to know the value of the property. I wanted to know the sizes of the homes, and I also did my own little study. How many cars do you think went down Monroe Holt Road on 8/14 at 6:42 at night till 7:42 at night? Just take a guess. And this is a side road, not even a main road. 244 cars went down our road on a Sunday afternoon. Really, that's really almost time for nighttime. Like me, I go to bed at 8 o'clock. So, it's getting kind of close to bed. So then I was like, well, while I'm looking at this, why don't I also look and see what's going down Hanford Road? Because what's spilling onto Monroe Holt Road is going to go to Hanford. And that's only going to cause more backup. Because I can tell you, when it's backed up on Hanford, I can't get out of my driveway. So because I'm 3 houses down from the stop sign. I didn't count the cars that went on Hanford that went on to Monroe Holt Road. This is just straight Hanford. From 6:55 to 7:42, 160 cars. So let's do the math here. We're looking at additional, if we have the 280, which is supposed to be on the other end of Hanford Road, you're looking at maybe two cars per house. 280, that's 560 more cars on that road a day. Now, if we go to the other end and look at these 2-story homes, that's 74 times 2, that's 148. So that's a 708 more cars a day coming onto Hanford Road and Monroe Holt Road. You tell me how we have the structure for that. We don't. Also, when I was at the meeting on Thursday night, I believe Wednesday or Thursday, it was a bad storm. My first question was, what's the square footage? And I was told about 2,500 square feet. By the time I was able to leave the meeting, I was told it was about 1,600 square feet. Because I wanted to see about the prices, because I can tell you, as a real estate agent, people are not looking for townhomes. People are looking for single-story homes. I'm not against building, but what about building single-story homes? I heard they want to blend in. That doesn't blend into one house on Monroe Holt Road or the roads behind me or Hanford Road. Those do not blend in at all. Even the road, even if you think about it, and I didn't even put this into my statistics, on the other end of Monroe Holt Road is Shamrock Golf Course. Haven't even started the development there. Can you imagine? That's another 200 plus homes that's going to be filtering over. And as far as traffic, there's all kinds of wrecks. That was a wreck on Monroe Holt Road last week. A transfer truck T-boned a 16-year-old boy and pushed him into a house because not only do they use our road as a pass-through, Sheets use our road as a pass-through. Also, we have the food place right down the road on Hanford. They use our road as a pass-through. So there is no limit of what kind of volume you're going to see. As I said, you can't get in and out of your property now. As far as runoff, I have called the DOT. I've even called all kinds of people. My ditch used to be pretty deep because they put 3M come through and put fiber optic cable. My ditch is almost filled up with sediment now because of that. I said, y'all need to come clean up. It's going to start backing up the road. Nothing's happened. Behind my house, when it's rained coming off of Hanford Road, I've got pictures of white caps in my backyard where the water's running off. That is how bad it gets because, again, we have no controls. Everything is just pushed down to us. So those are some of the things I just wanted to bring to y'all's attention that I have seen as far as the study. I'm not, like I said, against growth whatsoever. I know we're trying to optimize and get as much from the square footage as we can. That's why you're doing the building like they are. But take into consideration of what we have going on and the amount of cars that we're talking about. In 2 minutes, 11 cars went down our road. Would y'all want to live there? There was a house that was for sale on Monroe Holt Road. I went and showed the house. You know what the first person said to me? I don't want to live here. This road's too busy. So traffic does hurt the value of your home. If you don't know it, it does. Like I said, lived there 30 years. So, and when I was 27 years ago, when I was pregnant with my son, I was like, how many cars going down this road? Because it was busy then. It was 81 in 1 hour. And look how much has grown since then. So I just wanted to just share that. I just think that having these townhomes is not the best fit for that property. If you want to blend in, make it a single structure home where at least it will blend in. You won't have the overlooking, as we said before, because all these houses, that little road they're talking about cut through, guess where they're going to come out at? On the Monroe Holt Road to turn a right to get back up there to Hanford Road. So we have done nothing but creating more and more issues. So I would like if to reconsider what they're proposing. And also, like I said, I will continue to work to try to get a stop sign put down there because a man almost got killed because of a motorcycle wreck right there. If you come actually, and like I said, I even invited them to come to my house. I said, come sit in my driveway. Graham's such a great place. Come sit in it. Let's see what it's like. Nobody came. So that's all I have.
Hi, my name is Brittany Hoffman. I live at 513 Monroe Holt Road. I am diagonally across from Candy and 3 doors down from Miss Crystal. So I'm right across from Thompson Road, which is where a lot of the spill out is going to come out from. I grew up in this house. I am 33 years old. I've grown up and been raised in this home. And the traffic has always been an issue. You know, we couldn't go play in the road. That's a busy road. Got it. I have a 6-year-old son now. I can't even let him play in the front yard because of the traffic. And that's before we add close to 321 townhomes, because I feel like no one's taking into consideration what's actually Burlington city limits new building project, where they're about to build, 249, I think, townhomes in my backyard. I go to Knoll Memorial Church. That is my church. And right on the other side of their property, all these other townhomes are already being built. The land has already been cleared. But apparently that's Burlington city limits. And then you go less than a mile down and now it's Graham, and y'all want more townhomes are being considered to be built there. When I first moved back in, because the house has been in our family, when I first moved back in before I had my son, I was scared to back out of my driveway because I thought I was going to get T-boned or get into a wreck. So I would turn around in my own yard so I could go out forward facing. And I can't even imagine how bad it's going to be if we add all of these other homes, because I already know that these other 249 townhomes are being built. Like, that has been approved, but I guess that's not through Graham, which I still don't understand how it's different down the road. So my main concern is the traffic, the safety, the changing of the structure of our city. Like others before me have said, I'm not against building and letting other people come into the community. That's not the issue, but we have so many new developments coming in on busy roads that are already hard to get through. And if anybody lives around here and has tried to go down Hanford Road, especially on a Sunday, you can't do it before you add all these other cars to that. Like, I think this is I do not think this is a good idea. And it's also the first kind of meeting like this I've ever been to. So I appreciate your time. And that is my concern. And I was not at the meeting because I did not get a letter. I didn't know about the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Also, just talking about the growth and bringing that many more people, just her going to Graham High School. I mean, that they've grown 6% over from 2018-19 school year to the 2022 school year. They're already struggling for teachers, and Lord help the bus drivers that they have, because some mornings they have to do 2 routes. Sometimes they have to take kids home, then go back to the schoolhouse and pick her up on the day she rides the bus. So then you add this many families back into the equation on top of the already struggling bus drivers and the already struggling school systems trying to get staff back up after COVID. So just something to think about there too, as far as putting that many people all in one place.
Thank you. Mr. Bone?
Mr. Chairman, just a couple of points to get clarified. I've heard a lot of the discussion from the attorney and others on the height or stories here. If I'm not mistaken, the planner, when he described the development, described it as two-story townhouses. From the city's perspective, is it a two-story or a one-story development?
Let's see, with what I was presented from Amanda, it was listed as one story, and I believe I may have just been mixing my words up here with the two-family aspect of the single family or the two-family townhomes with the height of it as well. But I believe that was one of the conditions associated with what you provided, was that they were going to be one story, which I can also pull up. That's in the agenda packet right here as well. So I'm just going off of what I've been provided here. My apologies if there was any misinterpretation in regards to that. But yes, the conditions right here, building shall be no more than 2 stories. So that was one of the proposed conditions that they had associated with it. So in regards to the structural aspect of it, I'm not your building inspector here. I can't really make a classification into what is different between a single or a 1-story or a 2-story. So I'll just leave it up to what their conditions state, and I do apologize for any confusion.
All right, could you go back to the samples, the 6?
The ones that Ms. Hodian provided?
Yes,
I surely can, sir.
And just could I ask kind of a point of clarification? Somebody else did, but I didn't ever hear an answer. All of the examples show 2-car garages. Is that the intention, to have 2-car garages? Okay. And another one, I can't quite tell. And by the way, in terms of the, I think Ms. Hodian referred to the structure of the buildings. I'm assuming, but I'm only a layman, that the more 2-story type, or the option, as you described it, of the extra story or half-story, would primarily be the middle one on the top row and the outside ones on the bottom, just looking at the windows. Would that be likely? Yes. All right. My next questions are beyond what Ms. Hodian wants to answer, but if I could just press a little bit on a couple of the aesthetics. In the packet, I can't quite tell whether the top right one, in the packet that was sent out by the city, one of the examples was shown as a brick exterior. I can't tell whether that one's supposed to be brick from this.
Yes, sir. That's the same picture.
Okay. And that is one of the options that y'all are considering. And I just wonder if we could get some option. I think we did at the first meeting on the price points that they anticipate. I realize market conditions will change, et cetera.
Yeah, Mr. Boney, I can ask that, but that's not something
I
that,
understand.
that we consider in the rezoning.
Of the issue that comes up with neighbors on value and all that kind of good stuff. Obviously, square footage is another issue that there's been a little flexibility on discussion. And so I'm just wondering if there's a more concrete, or at least a range for the expected price points.
All right, we'll see what we can get for you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Susan Davis, and we live at 502 Adil Court, right beside Mr. Graham, who spoke earlier. And we're at the top of a cul-de-sac. And so our property's back directly up to where the building should be. And so one concern I have is not necessarily on the front of the buildings, but the back of the building. Will there be some kind of tree barrier or some kind of barrier between those properties? So that there will still be some level of privacy. And then I agree with what this gentleman said with the windows, the way they look. It looks like someone could get up on the second floor and look down in the property. So that was one of the things that I was noticing. And then another big concern is during the construction with, well, and even after the construction with the runoff that could come onto the properties that are a little below where the level of the land is for those, for the buildings. And then, of course, like everybody else has said, the traffic is a huge issue. We have to get out onto Thompson, to get on to Hanford, to get, to get onto Monroe Holt, then to get onto Hanford. And so with those buildings right there, there's going to be a lot of traffic going that way, plus the traffic that comes to Hanford. And it just seems like before these are inhabited with cars and people, that there should be something done around that intersection, because I agree with the lady that was talking about that big curve in that road. And right now with the traffic that there is, it's really hard to see around that curve, and some cars do come flying. So if we add 72, I don't know, 140 cars going through there, that's going to just increase that traffic. And to me, that needs to be looked at before this should be built. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
You know, my
Ma-
question, Ms. Davis.
Ms. Davis?
All right.
Anyone else? Alderman, would you like to respond? And your builder or developer?
I'll see if I can handle most of this, and then if I miss anything, I'm sure will let me know. Thank you for the opportunity to respond, and thanks to everyone who came and for this dialogue. A couple things. If we could go back to the site plan, perhaps, Cameron.
Yeah.
Well, this isn't much bigger, but
I'll pull up the other one.
Okay, thank you. I want to address the Nina Drive connectivity and some points that were raised. So if you could zoom in on that quadrant, please, where we connect to Nina. Thank you so much. So first of all, just because this isn't a specific response that's quick and easy, the mail kiosk and what that will do to traffic flow down into Nina as it relates to Canterbury. As you can see here, it's a complete turnoff with circulation internal to our road network, meaning you can come in off of Nina, or let's call it Hanford Landing Way, come in, park, get your mail, and then get back out. You don't have to loop around on the Nina road. So there was some comments about, does that mean people are going to be using our Nina road frontage as their loop around to get their mail? No, that the mail kiosk is completely situated off the public right of way, where vehicles can safely exit the right of way, park, get their mail, and then come back onto the right of way. And the way it's situated with the 2 points of access within our project, that can all be done without having to go down onto Nina Drive within Canterbury. Secondly, that was also in that same location in our previous plan, and was not an issue then. So I don't want anyone to think that's a new addition this time that is creating different concerns. It's always been that way and always been fully removed. Secondly, we talked about this a lot last time, but I was remiss not to mention it this time. The Nina Drive connection is required through the City of Graham's connectivity ordinance. That's not something that we have a choice about. In fact, I'll share with you, our very first submission in September of 2021 did not include that connection, and we were required to add it. So that's something that is a citywide objective for safety purposes, for emergency services purposes, for accessibility purposes. Imagine, one way in and one way out could get difficult. If a tree falls down and blocks the one entrance and somebody has a heart attack within that ambulance or somebody taking you to the hospital, that's not ideal. So that's why connectivity is a thing. It's not just Graham, that's everywhere. connectivity and creating opportunities for separate subdivisions to connect like this happens everywhere. And it's for that very valid reason. And
And Nina Drive will continue on.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's the reason why Nina Drive is stubbed into Mrs. Warren's property, because when it should develop, it needed to connect. And the same is true for this property. Should we be allowed to build this? You see, we have a stub to our undeveloped property to our adjacency. And that's because when that develops, it'll have to connect also. And that's the way these connectivity ordinances work, and that's what they're supposed to do. That said, traffic studies do show time and time again that traffic is like water. It follows the path of least resistance. And it's not going to, if you make the mistake of thinking, oh, let me wind my way through Canterbury and avoid all this, data tells us that mistake's going to happen exactly once. And you're going to realize that it's still more efficient and still more direct to, even at the busiest times of traffic on Hanford Road, to go out and make that straight shot than to wind your way through a neighborhood where people are walking, where you've got to be careful of different things that happen in residential non-collector streets. So that's just not how these connectivity points work. This is a well-studied policy of engineering and planning that the benefits far outweigh that concern. I would also remind everyone that, it's connectivity for everyone. So residents of Canterbury could just as easily come through this neighborhood and cut through and come out. And that's a two-way street, literally. So it's not something that we looked to add or that we want to give our residents an easy cut through to avoid Hanford Road that we think is bad. It's literally a requirement of the connectivity ordinance. It's not something that we see being a high risk for cut through opportunity, and it's something that benefits the entire population and the entire city network. Let's see. In terms of traffic globally, I would, we are hearing these issues. We did pull the traffic counts off the NCDOT's website. You're having 2,100 trips per day on Monroe Holt and 6,700 average annual trips or average trips per day on Hanford. And Hanford is designed, I wasn't able to get the data on Monroe Holt that quickly, but Hanford is designed to have a carrying capacity of 15,000 trips per day. So that's why NCDOT is not out there widening these roads and putting up traffic signals, because the data is not there. However, two things. One, one single project like this cannot be the bearer of an entire infrastructure improvement. And it also can't be held in a de facto moratorium while those infrastructure improvements are made. What it can do is help add to an arm-in-arm ask or a critical mass or a moving trend and need to address these things globally, holistically, from a top-down perspective that's required. Because, yes, when we go in and pull a permit, we'll have to go to NCDOT and get a driveway permit. They'll require us to do taper lanes to get in and out of our frontage. And that will make that movement safe. And of course, we'll have to comply with that. And that's good for R1 in and out, and that's necessary. And that's something that absolutely will be done. However, that's not going to help these global concerns that you're hearing. The only way that that's going to get looked at and helped is from the regional wide, like you said, the district office, or a citywide initiative. They're not city roads, they're state roads. So that's something that needs to be looked at from the proper channels and in the proper scope. And should we be permitted to go forward, we'd be happy to be a part of that look. More voices make more action. And I think, unfortunately, this is just the way it works, the way we build cities in this country. It has to get to a point that it's bad enough to then go do something about it. And that's unfortunately just the reality. This project is not going to tip that scale in any major way. It's these number of units is de minimis to what you're already hearing is going on in this area. Let's see, we heard about runoff and how that's going to be managed and mitigated. And of course, that's highly regulated. That's not only part of your TRC process, but it's part of state regulations. In summary, we have to meet a pre and post development status quo, meaning that the stormwater drainage calculations that Aiden are coming off the site now, pre-development, we have to maintain those in the post-development scenario. So if you look on our site plan, we've got the stormwater management devices. That's what those are for. They catch, hold, treat, and release at rates that emulate what the pre-development rates are. So yes, that's a big deal. That's why it's highly regulated, and that's why we have to do it, why it's checked and corroborated by your independent experts on your TRC. Let's see, I think that brings us to the architectural questions we've heard about windows and stories and square footage and materials. And, frankly, this is a tricky one because we do want to be transparent. We do want to give you guys the necessary information. We do want to give the community the information to be able to eliminate some of that fear of the unknown and have a vision of what this is going to look like. However, it is very important that we, steer clear of certain architectural elements that are statutorily prohibited for good reason, because they're proxies for other types of analysis that shouldn't be part of any zoning decision. And that's why that's important to hold true to. It's not because we don't want to talk about it or because we're trying to hide anything. It's because we haven't developed all of that yet, because we're at a land use phase of the analysis where we're simply trying to get permission to pursue the highest and best use of this property. We believe this is it. We're asking for you to agree with us that this is it. And then once we know that, then we can get down to actually designing and creating architectural elements. And that's something that frankly, has two decision points. It's what the builder thinks will work here. And that's something where, stakes are unified. They want this to be successful. They're not interested in building a project that nobody wants to buy. It's going to sit here vacant and go belly up. So they are doing the same market analysis. They're noticing the same buying trends that everyone else is, and they're going to be true to that. And then we have building permit process. Cameron mentioned the building inspector. So anything that comes through will meet all the requirements that the city has. And then we'll have an HOA review board that handles that sort of thing. But what we can't do is do it in the zoning process. We can do elevations that illustrate the intent, that illustrate what we're looking at here, that show how we've addressed things like massing and compatibility. But we can't get down into architectural review board type of specifics. Let's see. If I had anything else on my list. Pricing, that's definitely in that same category of things we can't talk about. However, we can all do the math. The land has a certain cost, construction materials have a certain cost, and we all know just anecdotally that both of those costs are high right now, very high. So even just backing into this, and we've got realtors here, people who've bought homes before, even backing into this, once you create those two price points that the developer and builder are having to incur, you can extrapolate pretty quickly that that homes are not going to be built cheaply and sold cheaply in Graham or anywhere else right now. So these homes are market rate, which means they're going to be in keeping with those economic facts that we're currently living in. So I will answer any other further questions, but I did want to address those topics that we heard from the community.
I got one question I'd like to ask your builder, contractor, developer.
Of course.
Yes, sir.
How long have you been building?
Since 2009.
Okay, the question I'm going to ask you does not specifically relate to this right here, but what is the average building cost per square foot roughly right now? Not land cost, just building square foot cost.
So we use the terms bricks and sticks. So right now, I would say it's probably $150 to $175 a square foot.
That was my thoughts also, but I wanted to hear it from someone that does it daily.
Gotcha.
Any questions for either one of them from any other board member here?
Is there a building height that we're going for?
Say that again, or
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, you can ask it.
Is there a building height that we're going for?
Thank you for bringing that up. There was some confusion. So I did want to clarify. We, again, we're not trying to, put a label on what you want to call these roof lines. But I would say that if we want to have a condition about building height, we should probably replace it with a number instead of the word stories, because that is subjective. And the reason it says stories in the original conditions is because, as I didn't do a very good job of explaining, but attempted to mention before, is that was a condition that I put on early on when we were first putting this application together, because we didn't yet know that we were going to be able to make all this come together and find a builder that had a product and wanted to be here and made all those different variables come together in the way we wanted. But I didn't want to just leave that out and not give any credence to, well, how tall are these things going to be? So I put that in there as a maximum ceiling of height. Now we know more. Now we've submitted elevations that show otherwise, that better reflect our intent. And if we did want to get into a condition about building height, I would like to do that in feet rather than stories. And that's for a lot of reasons, because architectural elements, you could easily have a one-story living space with roof gables, and we might call that different things with parapets and so forth. But so if we want to talk about building height, I think we need to visit that in feet.
Do you have a suggestion height?
Let me confer. Without having our builder here, I would be comfortable with 30 feet. 30 feet, which gives room for plenty of fenestration and roof lines and different types of architectural interest variability.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
I'd like just to ask a few questions about setbacks. The advertised setback on the plan is indicating 15 feet. Can you give me an idea of how far the sidewalk is inside of the right of way? The question is purpose for ensuring that the vehicle's not hanging out over the sidewalk.
Is that the front setback? I think we have a condition on there as far as the garage setback goes. I'm sorry, my name is Aiden Stoltzfus engineer for the project. As far as the minimum distance from back of sidewalk to front of garage, a minimum of 25 feet. That's what we're proposing. And these are on the plans were two-car garages. So 2 spaces in the driveway and 2 spaces in the garage. So as far as the park, I know there was some issue about parking concerns, street parking. It should have ample parking with 2-car garage, 2 spaces in the garage and 2 spaces in the driveway. And then these are also public streets, and they do allow for on-street parking in areas where don't block driveways.
And before you leave, could we just give us an idea of what the square footage is inside the building envelope?
I think it's a 30 by, what is that? Sorry, I don't have the plans. I don't have the plans that have dimensions on them right now, but I believe it's what was that again?
I got
2,200. It's about a 2,220.
So just to be clear, the rectangle that surrounds the circled number is 2,020 square feet.
That's correct.
2,220 square feet.
Each one or
For each one. Should be a 30 by 7 or 30 by 74.
So the rectangle that's surrounding the circled number is 30 by 74.
That's correct. That includes patio. So we don't have the exact footprint nailed down, but the block rectangles are 30 by 74. That's correct.
And then for Mr. Damien's information, we could discuss just a little bit about the requirements that you have to meet as far as stormwater concerns go, to give him a little peace of mind. He's located just to the south of the Nina connector.
That is correct. There is a existing draw there right now. And so our concern was actually bringing more water onto your property as part of the development. So we positioned the stormwater control device nearer to the creek. And we would be required to route water to that stormwater device from either the front, probably a lot of the front will be routed to the stormwater BMP device and then be controlled and released at a post or a pre-development level. So we hope we make the situation better for you when it's all said and done. Yeah. But that was the intent of the plan.
Yeah, I have a question there. I know one of the residents asked about a buffer, some type of buffer in the rear. Is there going to be any type of buffer in the rear development of the homestay? I hear a comment about that.
So an important distinction about this plan and about your ordinance is these are not townhomes. They're two-family homes. So that's the part of your regulations that we're operating under. And those don't trigger the mandatory prescriptive buffers that we had on our last plan.
Right.
That's just a trade-off of things. However, again, we want to make a nice neighborhood that people are comfortable with as well. We want our future residents to feel good about their backyards. So yes, we will be planting those property lines. Absolutely, we want vegetation between the two. We want to be good neighbors. We also want to create nice backyards for our future residents. So yes, it'll be planted, but we don't have a prescriptive width and planting regimen the way that was triggered by your townhome ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wood,
No more questions.
Mr. Boney.
Yes. It's the only reason I keep coming here.
Thank you.
I wanted to get one point of clarification. In answer to one of the responses, I thought the engineer or someone, maybe Ms. Hodian, said that the builder was not here. I thought I understood Mr. Yearns was the builder.
Developer, contractor.
Okay.
We call it horizontal development. So Mr. Yearns would do the land development
Great.
to entitle it,
Yeah.
to create lots, and then there's a vertical builder.
And do we know who that is by company?
I am not certain, not yet.
Okay.
I don't, that's again, something that's difficult to get somebody
Obligated.
lined up when
Sure,
they
you
don't
got
even know if they have a entitled property yet.
All right. And so, Mr. Chairman, I guess my underlying question is sort of how much of this site plan is locked in under the conditional residential request that's being made? For instance, the pairings in twos, is that locked in that would have to be the way any future builder would construct this?
Absolutely.
All right. And what, if any, obligation is there for any of the supplemental materials such as the design? None? All right.
State law prohibits that requirement. The new 160D statute.
But in other words, the general layout, the density, 72, is that the number? Aaron?
Yes, sir.
That is.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boney. Anything further?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
Chairman Ward, could I ask one thing? If the developer may consider,
Absolutely.
during construction, would it be possible maybe to barricade off the southern tip of Nina during construction? And just not use that during construction to give the neighbors a little bit of confidence.
Yeah.
I think that may be a helpful gesture.
All right, if there's no further questions for the developer, we'll close the public hearing now and we'll discuss it amongst ourselves.
I'll start.
Go ahead. On your-
Shocker there, huh?
Wait, no, you missed it.
We approved, a couple of months ago, their presentation, the city council shot it down, with the stipulation that they use the entire property. They cut the units down in size and they do everything that they've done in order to pass it. So they've met all the things. I mean, we were fine with it the first time, and the city council wasn't. And so the city council put stipulations on it, and they've met all those stipulations. So I have no problem.
Cameron, what was, or the original proposal, how many units was the original proposal?
What was it?
Was that a
69 originally?
69.
bunched in, and that was only on a portion of the property?
Yeah, so it cut off like right in this area
Right there at the
before the
BP.
creek. And so it was the 69 where you got 47 on the, or excuse me, 70 or however many it is. I'm just trying to do the math right here, but 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. So is it 49 on this side right now where they had 69 before. So.
Romy, I mean, Mr. Bass, you got any further? Sorry.
Um. As a person who has a house that's got steep pitch to my roof. And you can stand up in that thing, I'm thinking. So, I can understand the roof heights, and attics. In terms of what they build in there.
Put your microphone on, please.
It's on. You can't control what happens in the attics. My concern that I would like to see is a buffer, the question about buffers. If you did a buffer zone in the back between the Nina Drive neighborhood, Camelot, I believe it is, and this development, would that also serve as a way of water control?
Water control is actually going to be controlled by the state.
In terms of, if they put a buffer there, would that probably slow down the water?
She's
anyway?
offered that they were going to do landscaping the buffers along that property lines.
Can we put it in as a conditional, make sure it happens?
Sure, you can put it in as a conditional, that it does happen. I think that the state has got the overall control of water running off of one property to the next. So the landscape buffer that you may require, the state's going to require something that keeps it on the property.
I was thinking about the water buffer, I was thinking the landscape buffer being something to make it a friendlier neighborhood friendly to the neighbors and making sure it was there. And I thought, well, if it's there, is that also a way of slowing down whatever water issue that might be? That was just my only thought about it.
Cameron, you got any thoughts on that?
To be quite honest with you, not really. I am trying to kind of understand and see where you're coming from in regards. So you're saying the water's going to cut off and you want landscaping to be there to stop the water from flowing over into the Nina Drive areas. Is that correct? So when it flows off the back of the roof?
My idea was to have the landscaping there to be a buffer between them and the neighbors.
Mhm.
And I thought it'd be kind of cool if it also slow down any water issue there was.
That
That'd
goes-
be cool, not a big deal. We can't
That goes a
control
little bit above my expertise. I'm not an engineer in this aspect. Mr. Huff, I may be able to alleviate a little bit with his expertise.
That was actually aiming at Mr. Huffine.
So one of the requirements that we have to do in this specific case would be to capture all of the impervious surfaces and send those to the stormwater control measures. So if it comes off the roof or the sidewalk or even the public right of way and the street surfaces in this particular location, that stormwater is directed directly to a bioretention cell or a stormwater pond. And the facility itself has to reduce the flow back to the pre-construction flows. And in this case, the designer is actually putting the water closer to where it ultimately needs to go, away from some of the downstream neighbors. So he is accomplishing a goal that you are trying to accomplish as part of his requirement.
Yeah.
As far as the landscaping, the petitioner did tell us they were interested in making it a really pretty place. Those are my words, but I think they will accomplish that with the plannings between the two. And just looking at the site plan, the grades that are across the property have to transition in a very short distance off the road to the really hard adjacent western property lines, so the topography will match very similar. Once it leaves the building envelope, it'll have to, just by nature, match the adjacent property owners, and it should blend nicely. That might help.
I'm happy.
It would.
First of all, question for you and for you, Cameron. As memory serves, I think there was some discussion or question about spot zoning in a previous meeting. Do you remember that? I think there was some concern from the planning board, planning team that this was awfully close to spot zoning. Do you remember any of that discussion, how that was resolved?
I don't.
I was not a part of the meeting during that time either, so I am not too versed with it. I mean, conditional rezoning is basically what spot zoning is and the like. I mean, you take a piece of land and you sit here and condition with planning board and city council members. You could use it as a definition to say such, but it's a lot of development's rights to utilize these forms of rezoning aspects. My ultimate understanding is that what it says in our future land use plan is that the suburban residential area, according to the future land use plan, is the principal uses of the detached single-family homes and new neighborhoods, including ranges of duplexes, townhomes, small-scale multifamily dwellings of 12 units. So taking that into account, are we really utilizing spot zoning in a place where this is a principal use that we're looking for according to what the future land use is stating? My interpretation may not allude with that, so I'll kind of sit on that.
Thank you. I just remember there was some discussion. I don't remember the resolution. I didn't think of that ahead of time. My apologies for that. I would have been prepared if I thought about it earlier. Just some comments about this with respect to the requesters and so forth. DOT doesn't live in road in Monroe Holt Road. I've traveled that road many, many times. I've seen the traffic increase through the years over the last 25 years. It is a dangerous road at best. It's going to get nothing but busier with the addition development on the Burlington side. I think the traffic impact is significant. Adding, obviously, you're not going to have 144 cars trying to get out on Hanford or Monroe Holt at the same time, but I think that's significant. I think the traffic impact is going to be significant.
Sorry, go ahead. I was going to interject into that comment that I guess it's kind of the luxury of having the preliminary TRC review aspect of it is, you know, when we present this all to y'all, DOT has had the chance to review it and take into account all the traffic impact assets of it, and they didn't provide any further comments in regards to the TRC process. And I just wanted to at least let that be known that DOT has looked at the plan and has provided minimal comments.
And again, my comment in response to that is DOT doesn't live there. They haven't seen traffic backed up on Monroe Holt, 9 or 10 deep, trying to get out onto Hanford Road.
Yes, sir.
And correct me if I'm mistaken, folks. Secondly, I still think, and this was an objection that I had in the previous presentation, I think the density is too high. I think it's not in character with the neighborhood. I think it would also set a precedent if you look at the property at the corner of Hanford and Moore Road. That's a lot of vacant property that's going to be developed probably sooner than later. And I can't help but think that if we allow this development to proceed this type of use, I think that just would set a precedent. Develop that property at the corner in the same manner, and I don't think that's the best use. It may well be an allowed use. I don't think it's the best use. I don't think it's character with the neighborhood itself.
No comment.
I'll entertain a motion then.
Well, do you mind, Chair Ward, if I go back to one of the things we initially discussed with Mr. Bias in regards to the street trees? According to what it states in our ordinance, these roads along the interways off Hanford Road, whatever they're considering to be, are considered to be local residential streets by our ordinance. What it states in here is that the green zone, which is that area between the back of the curb and to the sidewalk, should include grass, landscaping, and street trees. So there's not specifically a requirement according to our ordinance of what we can require per feet or things along those lines. It's just that basis of it should be required. So ultimately it boils down to, we could present it, but they also could deny it if this were not in a conditional sense. So if it was something that you would look to include, that they have one per lot, then something that you could possibly condition for, which is apparently what y'all conditioned for last time. So I just want to bring that back up to note what you were talking about, Mr. Bias. I didn't forget about you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I do have a comment from the last meeting to tonight's meeting and the city council meeting in between. And I had the opportunity to go to the city council meeting and listen to the presentation. I think this developer has presented and done everything that the council asked for it to do, utilize the whole property, space it out some, taking consideration, the density was the biggest thing, but the sight lines and the connection points, that's a city requirement. I know that developer would love for us to say, okay, you don't have to put those Nina Drive stubs in and can make that connection, but our ordinance says different. But I do think that they have presented a good plan. And I don't consider it as a spot zoning or even remotely. This resembles the same project that's sitting at the corner of Moore and Rogers Road. I think it's Chandler's Village. And also the property that you referred to at the corner of Moore and Hanford Road was approved for townhouses some 10 to 15 years ago that was never built. Jay Burke's property there. And I certainly think it's true in character and does meet our 2035 growth management plan.
Now, the property I'm referring to is the Huey
Where is the Huey Boone property?
on the southeast, southwest corner.
Are you talking about the distance where the single family house is sitting now? It's not developed. Yes. Okay.
They've already got a stub.
Right. It connects to it right here. Right.
That's what the other stuff is for. I'd like to make one comment or make a motion. Traffic is a big deal. Schools is a big deal. We don't have anything to do with traffic. Your state legislator does. And your county commissioners control the school budget. If the schools are overcrowded, you need to complain to the county commissioners. And they're loath to raise taxes, but if you want nice things, you got to pay for them. If you want teachers, if you want schools, not that aren't crowded. Population is going to continue to grow. Roads are going to continue to get crowded. So your state legislators and your county commissioners have a direct impact on that. And the squeaky wheel gets the attention. So DOT doesn't live on Monroe Holt Road, but you can make them wish they did, but by letting them know what it's like there. Send them pictures, send them diagrams, send them your traffic counts, and they'll have somebody out there counting it, and they'll say, well, had the same thing on Rogers Road, so well, that's good for 15,000 cars a day. And until it gets to that level, there's not much they're going to do about it. We can complain to the city council, to complain to the chief of police, saying that, or in the sheriff said, look what's happening in this corner. And that's, you've got to be an active citizen in order to make the change. Having said all that, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, Mr. Christmas,
I make a motion, we accept this plan as this zoning development ordinance as presented. Applicable to the 2035 comprehensive plan, 4.3.1 land use patterns, 5.1.2 variety of ownership opportunities, and 5.2.1 diverse neighborhoods.
thank you, Mr. Christmas. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Hey,
I'll poll the board just to get a clarification. Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Aye.
Mr. Hopines?
Aye.
Mr. Christmas, aye.
Aye.
Ms.
Aye.
Wooten, and I'm aye. Thank you. Okay, Cameron, let's move on to the next one, please.
Yes, sir. I'll give it a minute real quick. Let everybody.
Yeah.
else know.
That'd be fine.
Yeah. Then it's no interpretation, then that's what feels weird.
I see that traffic every day. I'm on Hamper Road every day. I live just as close as anybody.
you and me both.
That's right.
That's just what kind of. 50 minutes, get out of town. It takes you 50 minutes to do a chair wash.
Hey, could y'all take it outside, please, so we could continue on with the meeting? Thank you.
Yeah.
Give him this gentleman right here. One more second.
Just call me when you're ready. sir.
Okay, take your time. Cameron, if you would in the future, would you please put a consistent state, tabulation sheet at the end of each one with a consistency of statement of whether you deny it or not?
Yes, sir.
I
I
asked,
believe I have a hard copy of it right here, but I'll certainly do that. My apologies.
that's okay.
Yeah, there's
Oh.
no one.
Okay, let's move forward.
All right, so next is a request to rezone approximately 1.15 acres at 302 North Maple Street, 203, 207, and 213 West Market Street from R7 high density residential to CR conditional residential with multiple G pins listed. The general area subject to this potential rezoning is comprised of numerous older homes, mostly in poor to fair condition, as well as a mixture of vacant buildings and vacant lots. And because mixed-use residential uses are permitted in the downtown residential future land use plan classification, this rezoning request presents a rather intriguing development scenario to try and spur infill and redevelopment that ties to the downtown business district and the city's desire to be a walkable community and to have a diverse aspect of housing types near downtown. This would also allow it to have a higher residential density clustered near the downtown area to help serve the downtown businesses and that foot traffic being noted again. One of the biggest challenges associated with this development is the off-street parking aspect and to ensure that the buildings are compatible with the surrounding residential areas. The applicant has addressed majority or all of these items in his conceptual site plan and narrative, and the density would be alike to that of a multifamily zoning directly across the street. Yet the urban center feel of the site will help it blend in with the surrounding neighborhood and downtown areas and furthering that connective line in between both. Given that the location and the likely development patterns in this area, high density residential would be a compatible use in staff's opinion. And that's all I have in regards to the staff report, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cox.
Pulling double duty tonight.
Great, great.
Good evening again. Amanda Hodiern, 804 Green Valley Road in Greensboro. You're familiar with Jason Cox, having presented this case. Y'all, another one that y'all have seen a number of times. I think Jason has a lot going on these days and just needed a little help spreading himself so thin. So I stepped in now that he's loosened the jar, I guess. But excited to work on this one. As the staff report said, I think that's an appropriate statement that this is an intriguing opportunity for some infill development. And I'm excited to get to look at this one with you guys. This property is owned by Maple and Market One LLC. So that's the first big development. And that's that Mr. Cox's entity has now purchased the property. So previously he had it under contract, was, working to put all this together. Now he's actually solidified that investment, owns the property, and is excited to keep going with it. So just a quick case history. He initially filed this back in June 2021 as a B1 general use case. Had a vision for it, but filed it that way just to try and get that vision off the ground and go forward. Ultimately, City Council denied that due to concerns about two properties within the subject property that might have some historical significance. So Mr. Cox went back to the drawing board, ended up decreasing the size of the subject property to exclude those two potentially historic parcels or structure parcels to take away that concern and refiled. It was interpreted at that time that the 6-month waiting period was triggered, even though the case was smaller and the parcelage was different. But so it waited 6 months and came back to you 6 months later as that smaller parcel, again, as a B1 request. Ultimately denied again over concerns about the breadth of what could happen under that B1 zoning. B1 being y'all's most intense commercial district for downtown. So concerns about what all that could include. But there was, I think, some interest and some attractiveness about the idea of mixed use here on a site that is so downtown located and does want to capture downtown core values such as walkability, live, work, play, ability to be car optional, those types of things. So came back again, refiled it as a conditional mixed use request. Again, trying to infuse some of those downtown type of qualities in the capabilities for the project, but condition it down so that the whole universe of options wasn't on the table, and the city could get a better sense of the viability of the project, and the community and the city could get a better sense of what's this really going to look like, how's it really going to work. That one ultimately denied due to concerns that maybe on a closer look, no commercial uses are appropriate here. That was the feedback at that time. So this latest iteration that you're seeing is now an all residential proposal, refiled as conditional residential, the same request we've been talking about already tonight. And of course, what that means is residential in use, and then a site plan specific set of conditions that are binding to specify how that residential use will be carried out. So that's how we're here before you today. There's also been some parts of this case proceeding that didn't develop fully due to the need for a more specific site plan. Again, I mentioned previously tonight, the city's, I think, been really evolving in its TRC process and its policies around conditional zoning and site plans and how that's folded into y'all's process. And in this case, has sort of been churning along with those evolutions, and kind of came to a head at the same time to where it was decided, okay, we really need engineered site plans. So yet again, as an additional attempt to keep this project going and get it across the finish line, Mr. Cox did just that. And this is a representation. You have a more full view of it in your packet of those engineered site plans that he's had developed. And what you can see here are the building footprints, where those buildings would go, how they're oriented, what the unit count is in each of those buildings. I said this is residential, so it's multifamily residential, meaning the form is multiple units under one roof. And you see the parking access points and how those work. What I want to point out and just, as you drill down into this plan is that that's not all parking and articulation. That's actually 8 distinct buildings. So as we talk about this site, we talk about it being a multifamily project. You may see that it's 38 units being proposed. But I think one of the intriguing, to use Cameron's word again, aspects of this is that it is broken out into 6 different buildings that manifest in 3 different styles and elevations, footprints. So it really is a really thoughtful and intentional classic infill project where you get new structures dropped in a very similar development pattern to how a downtown organically develops. And we'll look at that closer in a moment. This is a rendering of how that would look. So again, you see how this is going to situate on the block. You see how this rendering is placed into this oblique aerial. And you can see what I'm talking about. This site plan just drops right into the existing built environment in terms of blocks developed with separate and discrete, smaller structures. This isn't a big monolithic, multifamily complex dropped into the middle of Graham's very unique and quaint aesthetic. It's not looming over the rest of the neighborhood. It's not creating a streetscape along a certain block that feels different and out of place with the rest of your downtown. And it's also infusing the block and downtown with different, built forms that are all common to the architectural vernacular in your Graham downtown. You've got sort of the historic farmhouse look with the gabling and the wraparound front porches there at the front corner as we're looking at it now. You've got the larger 6-unit brick buildings there along Maple that have the flat roof with the parapet that are common in a downtown streetscape form. And then behind that, you've got the smaller, again, sort of Southern classic home style cottage that are 2 units each. So you're really getting some neat architectural ideas here of how to infuse some density into a very appropriate location for it, but hide it in these structure forms that look very much in keeping with this residential edge of your downtown. And what that does, in addition to looking nice and creating a really nice streetscape to walk by, a cool place to live, it infuses some much needed density into downtown right here on your core, without, again, having to pay the price of that density in what you're looking at each day. So you're meeting some core needs and objectives and policies from your comp plan in terms of creating diverse neighborhoods, creating housing optionality, creating density in appropriate locations, creating opportunities for people to live downtown, to walk downtown where they work, where they play, to be car optional, and you're doing it in a way that fits right in and looks seamless. These are some close-up views. These are those 6-unit buildings that you see facing Maple. This is the frontage along Market with the sort of farmhouse gabled roof, wraparound porches, creating a lot of street to building what we call, activity. You got people sitting out on the front porch. That creates a nice, activity and an activeness to the streetscape as people go by. And this is looking kind of interior to the site as you get behind those brick 6-unit buildings and sort of go into that courtyard interior where those smaller 2-unit cottages sit. Those are nice and hidden behind those brick buildings. It really creates kind of a nice quiet garden courtyard feel in there for those units. I mentioned this before, but again, this is just hitting so many aspects of your objectives and your policy goals for downtown. You're improving your land use by creating a smart density choice here to infuse housing at a much needed location in a much needed way. It goes right here on this growing frontier of your downtown where people can live within 2 blocks of the courthouse and your city square. So you can easily see how that's going to encourage walkability, car optionalism, and things of that nature. Diverse housing in complete neighborhoods. You're getting housing variety that doesn't currently exist. your downtown, like so many downtowns around here, is having a lot of success right now. It's really thriving. It's got great private investment. And this project is just another example of that, keeping that going and growing it out. It's not just around the square. It's also going out to these areas where the housing frankly needs to be improved, and new opportunities need to exist. And this is providing that. Again, it gives close proximity to all the reasons that people are downtown. Adds to your resilient economy, and we've talked a lot already about walkability. Let's see if there's any other aspects of this I wanted to mention. We do have staff recommendation for approval. Largely, I think because of the reasons I've discussed: comp plan, consistency, built form, intentionality and thoughtfulness that really does blend well into your downtown. And the other thing I would highlight harkens back to how we started tonight, which is the progression of this case. And again, much like my case before this is the result of a lot of input and of a developer who is really stuck with this, and every time taken that feedback and applied it. It's been incremental, and we've been slowly getting to it. We've been peeling that onion, but to look at this now, it is beautiful, and I think that it fits so nicely into your downtown. It's so compatible. In the planning world, I'm a planning nerd. We call this missing middle housing. It's that missing middle that creates hidden density opportunities where they're appropriate, so that you get the ability to put people where they need to be and where they should be, but it doesn't have to look out of keeping with what the rest of the community looks like. And it creates housing opportunity, neighborhood variability, and different economic opportunities for all those who currently live in your city and want to live in your city. That the target demographic for this is single people, maybe newly married, but probably going to move out pretty soon. And that's due to the square footages and the bedrooms. There's primarily one bedrooms. There's, I think, 10 two bedrooms in here. And frankly, those two bedrooms are really set up more as an office or an occasional guest. And that's by design. Graham is seeing a lot of that demographic now, and there's not a lot of housing to feed it. So that's by design. That's a need here. And that's the type of people who meet these goals of wanting to live downtown and wanting to be nearby the things that downtown offers. So that's why it's built that way. You saw that. We can go back to the site plan, please. Thank you. You see the parking lots on here. Parking was mentioned in Mr. Cameron's report. The site does have two parking lots that are very thoughtfully tucked in. It's not one big expansive parking lot that you see. It's tucked in very appropriately, and it parks the site. Again, these are targeted at single people living. So, as a landlord who manages property, we know that it makes sense for our tenants to have a place to pull up and park at night. If you're coming home with groceries, if you're coming home late, you want to be able to park and know that you're going to be able to park when you get home. This accomplishes that. Now, for additional parking, when you have guests, if there's a visitor, that sort of thing, that's where being downtown comes in handy. And again, that's one of the reasons why it makes sense to have these types of opportunities downtown, because we do have, you do have city investment in parking lots. They're very close by. There's multiple examples that you guys have heard before in relation to this case of the public parking available proximate to this site is closer than the public parking that's available to your courthouse or the movie theater downtown, or if you were to park in the first row of Walmart and walk in the front door. So just to give you a little bit of relativity there, it's not unreasonable, to tell your sister visiting for the weekend, hey, park your car across the street in the parking lot, so residents who live here can park on site. So that's, I think, an appropriate allocation of privately handling that obligation and making good use of public infrastructure. So I'll stop there for any questions. Mr. Cox is here with me, available. He's obviously got a lot more on the history of this, but I hope you'll agree that this is this is the representation of a lot of hard work on everybody's part, fine tuning this and getting to something that is the right fit and really is going to be an asset to Graham's continuing thriving of its downtown.
Total number of units again?
38. So it's,
The spreadsheet here, I mean, under proposed conditions, it says no more than 40 dwelling units.
so if I can kind of give a narrative and context of those conditions, those were developed in a previous iteration prior to having a fully engineered site plan. So in other words, usually when we think of conditional zoning, historically, it's been a narrative of conditions that craft a land use. As y'all's process has evolved and you've wanted to see an actual binding zoning site plan, that kind of replaces the need for a narrative set of conditions. So those are from that previous narrative. Now that it's on paper, we have survey data, it's been laid out. Now we know it's 38. So, and if you want to kind of think of, well, what do we use these conditions for? All of those conditions have ended up in this site plan that you see, but they're now represented graphically instead. And I think that you can utilize both of them with the caveat that I would say, if there's a conflict between the two, the site plan controls.
In the one bedrooms, how many one bedrooms do you have?
Let's see, we have 10 twos, so the ones would be 28, is that correct? Yes, so
And how many three?
no threes, which is again intentional based on who this is designed for and how it's designed.
So Mr. Cox has been working on this for a pretty good period of time, and each time he has taken the feedback from us, the council, some of the people sitting in the audience, and he's tweaked his plan each time. And I think he's done a great job with what he's done and what he's presented. But I'm really concerned about the parking spaces and not enough on-site parking. That is my only concern with the whole project. I think it's a great presentation that's been presented. But does he own the land? Do you own the land in adjoining any more of this, Mr. Cox? At that time?
And one thing I would remind us is that, you know, it gets a little conflated to think about. I know I've been harping on this all night, but that's our job here tonight. It gets a little conflated to differentiate between land use and determining highest and best use and making sure that that can work versus, you know, actually drilling down into every single site consideration, which is still a task ahead for any developer. Just because you get zoning approval doesn't mean you get to go vertical tomorrow. So, you know, I would invite you to analyze this and look at this as, you know, can it be viable? Have we passed that bar that this is an appropriate land use in this location, in this format? And then from there, that's not to say that, you know, he might decide, maybe I do need a little more parking. And of course, your ordinance, the way this is set out is there's staff modifications, minor that Cameron or his staff can make. And then if it gets really substantive, we'd have to come back to you. But I would, you know, that said, you know, give a little bit of leniency for further site tweaking as we go through the TRC process, because that will happen. But also I would urge you to really, you know, lean on and embrace the objectives and the policies set out in your comp plan that, you know, I've been driving a long time too, and I've lived in North Carolina most of that time. So I'm used to getting in my car and parking and going to where I want to be, but that's not where we need to get to. And it is going to take us kind of, you know, evolving in our thinking and in our land use form and in our built environments to create that. Does it make sense to do it, you know, in where I was talking about before at Hanford Road? No, because you can't walk everywhere there. But does it make sense at a place like this? Yes, for two reasons. One, because you can walk everywhere you need to be, theoretically, and two, because this isn't designed to have more than one person living here. So it's not unreasonable to, you know, to build for what you're actually going to have, rather than sort of the Christmas day at Walmart thinking where you have to build for the worst case scenario. And I get it, that's different than how we've done in the past, but I do think that that's where we're going.
Mr. Bailey? Have any questions? Mr. Huffines?
Sure. Well, you just elaborate though, how many parking spaces are there?
I think I come up with
42.
42 originally.
There's 38 and
38.
4 handicap parking spaces.
And that's a very, what's the word, sort of tangible number to wrap your head around. There's 38 units. So we're parking the units, and again, which are built to be for single people. So will there be an occasional guest? Yes, but we also have very ample and reasonable and appropriate places for guests to park. So, the real question is, are you parking the actual daily, comings and goings that we know are going to be here and we know are going to expect a spot every night? And that the answer to that is yes. And that's that's something that couldn't be said in any previous iteration of this plan. So that's done specifically to meet that feedback that was heard before. We are now parking the site. And that's a landlord consideration as well. As I said, wanting to be a responsible landlord that his tenants will want to keep renting from him.
So it'll be one space per unit, correct? One space per unit.
So that your
Okay.
parking formulas under your ordinance are different than that, but yes, I think it's much easier to think of it as 38 spaces and 38 units. But your parking ordinance looks at it by bedroom.
I think it's 1.5 spaces per 1 bedroom, up to 2 bedroom. and
Yes,
then
sir. That's correct.
Above 2 bedroom is 2 spaces.
Correct.
which-
So if you think about that, a 1-bedroom apartment requires the same amount of parking as a 2-bedroom apartment. So by having a predominance of 1 bedrooms, we've got 28. We're actually, trending towards the underside of that parking ratio formula, which is another reason how it helps you understand why it works. Because again, any responsible landlord isn't going to want to create a parking situation because those tenants are not going to renew their leases.
Mr. Huffines?
I just have a couple of questions and one statement. I'll do my statement first. I think this is a beautiful transition, improvement. I mean, you can use any adjective you want to. This is the illustrations really brought it to life for me. Keeping in a consistent streetscape in both directions. The massing, it seems to work really well, and I'm very appreciative. I think it looks really well. There's a conflict on the site plan versus the illustration. I just want to make sure that the fence committed along the long east-west boundary, which runs, as we're looking at the television screen, it's at the top of the page in the kind of the orthographic blend and showing the proposed in the surrounding neighborhood. There is a fence that's shown in that illustration. I just want for a piece of clarification, is the fence as part of the condition, as part of the boundary, as I did not see it.
So
It's an adjoiner fence off the property, but this fence appears to be a new fence as it's drawn. So I just want to see, are we building a fence? Is it opaque? Are we building a buffer? Is it a boundary buffer? Is there something here, or is it just?
So I think the fences that you're seeing on here are survey data, that they're existing fences.
That's correct.
That have been labeled. In terms of what was drawn on the renderings, is that?
Is it going to be new or opaque or?
The intention.
No, please. Yeah. That's a fine detail.
Yeah, so just for clarity, there was a existing fence that states wood fence at the plan east along here. And if you'll note, it actually calls out that one of the goals of the project would be to correct the fact that actually the existing concrete driveway is partially encroaching on a neighbor. So that would be demoed and removed as well, so there would no longer be that encroachment. And then you have a neighbor along that line in which we've already committed to building a fence if desired. We had not originally said a wood fence where it states wire fence existing on the other side, because at the moment that is purely vacant land. And should this project move forward, there could be potential for that in the future. No need to build a fence if it's not going to face a person, was the thinking on that. But certainly if that's a condition, we're more than happy to meet it. We just haven't had neighbors request it.
Thank you, Jess.
And then the other item that as it pertains to parking, I can almost arrive at one parking space per bedroom. Just trying to work through this in my mind. I can get to 47 spaces that we could fit on this piece of property with 48 potential bedrooms. And that would go a long way in what I think we're trying to do in consistency with parking the site, with parking the project. We're one bed, the way I can view the site plan changes, just minimal, basically with striping, we could be one space shy of one space per bedroom. And I think that would be enormous.
That's just changing the striping.
It would be adding 2 spaces adjacent to the dumpster, 1 space adjacent to the southwest driveway entrance. Keep coming left, Cameron. Right there appears to be one, even if it's a compact space, we could make that work. And then I think if we're less than 50 total parking spaces, we could have 2 accessible spaces as opposed to 4. And then we would have we'd be so close.
The
And
minimum,
that's not increasing the ground coverage, that's just changing the width of the parking spaces.
I did speak incorrectly. So we would be adding about 600 square feet of asphalt. But I'd just like to suggest that and maybe have some comments back. That's all I have. This is a beautiful project.
Mr. Chris,
Once again, I mean, Mr. Cox has jumped through hoops and jumped through flaming hoops, and there's a brick wall on the other side more than once. And he's gone before the city council and they asked exactly what he's delivered. They wanted an engineered plan with dimensions and that's what we have. So I'd really like the different size, the different aspects, different architectural styles of the buildings.
Mr. Glass?
I appreciate the visuals, the graphic presentation, and the site plan. I'm glad we're moving in that direction. I would have appreciated the treescapes being included on the site plan that are in the visuals. But other than that, it's fine. It's fine with me.
Mr. Wooten?
I want to add my comment in agreement with what the others have said. The plan, the renderings and so forth are, I think, a distinct improvement. Missions. I like the layout, et cetera, et cetera. The only thing that concerns me again, and this issue continues to come up, is the issue of parking. By my count, there are 38 units, depending on how you view the handicap spaces, you're either 15 to 19 spaces short of what the UDO requires. And I understand what you're saying about utilizing city parking spaces and such as that. I just don't think that's realistic. For you to think and plan that these are just going to be single people with single cars, I don't think that's reflective of what the market would be, what reality would be. I think you're liable to have young marrieds with two cars, 2 vehicles. You may have singles with multiple vehicles. So again, the parking, the lack of parking up to code is a concern to me, as it has been with previous submissions.
Cameron?
Otherwise,
Oh.
I think it's very nice.
Cameron, if you,
I thought about that, looking at the renderings for the first time, Mr. Crispin, I thought you would.
I do.
I think it's
The
a nice
renderings
mix
are just
that pays homage both to the mill just across the street to the neighborhood, to the other areas in that neighborhood. So yes, compliment on that. Parking still is an issue to me.
Do the same thing across the street. It'd really be great.
Cameron, if you would, pull up the Graham GIS zoning map and show the city parking a lot closest to, and give me a measurement from that property. I think it's 347 feet or 300 plus feet. I mean,
Yes. And just fair point of clarification, it will have to be, kind of taken with a grain of salt with the GIS stuff. It's not always 100%
That's right.
accurate.
That's right.
And let me even make sure I'm able to do it on the public zoning map of it, because I don't have my, I should be able to. I don't know if I can.
I have it.
But let me, yeah, because I'd have to log into my staff one, and I don't know if I have access to that currently this time, so.
When it first came in. Keep it on the
Is
computer.
this the public parking lot you're referring to right here down?
Yes, and give me how the crow flies line.
So you got the development right here on West Market, shuttle down North Maple and into the parking lot, is that correct?
Well, the entrance, all of that, so you could run it from the corner of his property at Market and Maple and pull me a measurement just to the edge of the property of where the city lot is. It's not a great deal of distance.
Yeah, I think the only issue is I can't necessarily do it on the public zoning GIS aspect of it.
Here, let me help you with it.
All right, go ahead. Where I need to click on?
Can you click on the internet?
Yeah.
Go to City of Graham GIS and then click on the zoning map.
That's what I was just on.
But my map will allow me to do it right here.
Really? Does it look like this?
No, it does not look like that.
Can you click on the GIS right here?
No,
Okay, that's where we're getting off at.
as I go right, my site looks totally different from yours. It's a regisnc.org. Yeah. But it's GeoWeb. And I click on Graham's zoning map right here.
How's this right here? Is this looking more?
There you go.
There we go. I was on a completely different one. I apologize. Now let me figure this out. I don't use this one. I apologize. We have a staff one here, so that's the only reason.
You do have the measurement.
I do, yes,
Yeah.
sir. It's 340 feet to the closest public parking, 360 feet by walking,
Yeah.
not as the crow flies, which is 1 minute. We walked it. If you want to get to that municipal lot, that's 350 feet. So essentially the same thing. And there's also street parking in this location as well. So, to y'all's points, I think that it would be flippant and really not examining the whole issue to just say, oh, we all should strive to be more car optional and be one car households and try to put that anywhere. You have to couple that with other active measures to make that happen. So here, I think the location is one of those active measures. You're doing it in a location where you're not just gonna create a situation where people are parking on the grass. There actually is legal ample parking in the vicinity. It's reasonable to walk to. 1 minute is, almost as long as it takes me to get my kids inside from my driveway. So that's normal. Also, we're building for it. We're building the space to discourage multiple, two discrete users. Will you have some young married couples? Yes, but they likely would share a car as well if they're choosing to live in this type of location. Because when we go look at housing choices, if we see, you only get one space here, this probably isn't the spot for us. If you've got a weekend leisure car, this is probably not the place for you. This is built for somebody who's either single and wants a secondary office, or again, has that one car lifestyle. And we're doing that by making that second bedroom so much smaller. I was looking for it in here. I believe they're 9 by 10.5 or 9 by 11 second bedrooms, that's very small. That's gonna be, where, again, where a buddy from college comes to visit, that's not a roommate type of living scenario. So, we're no pun intended, we're walking the walk here to make this a one-car type of project. We're coupling this request to see with us here on this parking formula by actually putting things in place that make sense.
Cameron, what is the distance between the back two buildings to the north on that same print you was on?
Oh, sorry. From these two right here,
No, straight on towards property line, straight up towards property line. All right, what's the distance between that building there?
this one's 6.1 feet and this one is 7.2 feet.
Okay, I mean, I think we can achieve where we're trying to get to. I think there's parking available here on this particular piece of property where we could add some more parking and take away a little bit of green space. My concern is that I've been an owner of multifamily and had to deal with parking issues, and you don't ever plan for it. I mean, you got your parking place, but then your next door neighbor comes or two of his visitors come and they take up your parking space where you normally park. And then the next thing you know, everybody's calling the police department because somebody's parked in their parking place. They're calling the property owner and they're wanting someone to do something about it. And I'm just, I think he's got a great project here, but I think there's room that we could add a few more parking spaces. But I know Jason has thought about this for hours and hours and hours. But there's room there to add some more spaces.
And we can certainly, ask our designer about it. Would just, frankly, it is a goal though, I think one of Jason's core values as a developer is to, invest in downtown and downtown living and creating those goals and policies that make downtowns thrive. And part of that is keeping the cars out and keeping it walkable. So I think that, yes, you're right. We want to make a viable site that tenants are happy with and you're not having issues in the parking lot every night. But we also want to, build for the result that you want. So there's a little bit of balance there, but certainly I think we can look and see if there's a way to maybe revisit that a little bit. But I would just also ask that, think about that a little as well, that, we are trying to evolve into that next era of not being so car dependent and trying to build for that.
What public lot are you referring to? Other one that's on Maple Street that backs up behind the church.
Mhm.
I guess that's my question. Is that a public lot? Yes,
Yes.
no, it's a public lot. It's marked there on the map. You see it with the P there and B1 quadrant. Put your cursor over on it, right there.
I believe Mr. West had in his materials a utilization report of your city lots. So this one is underutilized and there is capacity there. So
somewhere here.
would submit to you that, this is the purpose of having municipal lots downtown, certainly not to handle everybody's private parking, but to augment and supplement. And I would also throw this out for your consideration in Greensboro and other similar places. I mentioned Greensboro because it's right down the road. Downtown, you have what's called the Central Business District. It's the catch-all. If you're within this core, you are CB zoned. And the hallmark of CB zoning is that there's no parking required. And that's to create that environment where, you've got that downtown core that creates those active walkable streetscapes because you're keeping the cars out.
Further questions for the petitioner? Thank you. Anyone from the audience would like to speak about this? Please state your name and address, please.
Sherry Larzalier, 305 North Maple Street. My main concern is the property facing Maple Street because it's going to be right across from my house. If I am correct, Jason, you said at one time it was going to be 3 stories on. That is our main objection. My daughter wasn't able to come tonight. But our main objection is 3 stories because all the houses on Maple are 1 story and 2 story, nothing above 2 story. And I don't think 3 story would fit in properly with the Maple units. We're really appreciative and impressed with your improvements. You know, we really like the new look of the residency, and so that's our main concern, is knocking it down from 3 stories to 2 stories.
Anyone else? I'll close the public hearing and we'll discuss it amongst ourselves. Mr. Wooten?
Just the comment about parking. Chairman, we have a UDO for a purpose, being consistent and fair, equitable for everybody. Take an exception in this case. Say the next person that comes along will not expect the same concession. Set a precedent, I think needs to be on site and up to code.
I don't disagree with what you're saying there, Mr. Wooten, but he is asking for a conditional rezoning. And the conditional rezoning, I mean, we can deviate from the actual zoning ordinance because of the conditional that he's asking for, but I think there's room there to find some more parking spaces. And
I would not disagree with you on that.
I don't know if he could find, what was that number, 14, 15 more spaces?
15 to 19.
15 to
Depending on how
19.
you view the handicap spaces.
All at 1.5.
It's 57 that's required by
57
ordinance.
required, right?
Yes, sir. But you're correct, Chair Warden, in regards to, it's almost like a handshake between you all and city council and the property owners, that this is the condition of the site. You can go away from the zoning ordinance. It's just ultimately if they can agree with city council and city council agrees with the developer on that aspect. So it's tough to force their hand if they ultimately kind of want to move forward with this aspect and kind of go towards city council with the idea that they'll utilize the city parking if the city council will allow it. So I just wanted to let that be known.
Why I'm not opposed to about the use, keeping cars out, that sort of thing, that's a worthy goal. No problem with that at all. I'm not arguing that. What I am saying, even if it is conditional zoning, we need to, in my opinion, retain that parking requirement. Because, as I said, people down the road will expect that same concession. Or could possibly. We need to set that precedent. That's all
Step back. I'm going to open the public hearing back, let her make these comments here.
That's what his.
I do too. Yeah.
I just want to address the precedent comment because, you know, we do look for that and we want to be not totally out of tone with the city. But this actually is in keeping with recent precedent. There was a recent townhome project that you approved for 44 spaces, which equates to 0.97 per unit for that project or per bedroom. for that project. So this ratio would be in keeping with that. And to use the math, 47 parking spots for this project would actually be over the ratio that you approved for that recent townhome project, what, 2 months ago? So, you know, this is not out of whack, out of scale with what, you know, has been considered reasonable and appropriate in this downtown core. So just to give you a little bit of reference point on that.
That was the mayor's project.
Want Mr. Huffines to explain?
Yeah. If I could ask Mr. Huffine to go through the math of the 600 additional square feet of asphalt to get 2 more parking places. If you go through that, I'd appreciate it.
So what I did is envisioned a parking space on either side of the dumpster corral, reducing its depth to a minimum of just over the size of the can. So maybe 10 feet deep.
But not have that bib in front.
Well, you'd still have the bib, you'd still have the concrete landing area
Yeah.
to protect the pavement, but you would have the gate and the enclosure minimized
Okay.
to facilitate parking. It won't do anything to reduce the garbage capacity of the enclosure, but it would be beneficial in adding 2 spaces.
There's 2 spaces on either side there.
Correct. And then I'm just curious, there may be a very good reason why there is a larger green space there in the southwest corner, but it seems to be that if it were to match and be symmetrical with the other 3 curb returns, then another space could be added there. There may be a tree there. There are a couple of trees I wanted to talk about, but there may be a tree there that I'm not aware of. But there's a square footage available there for a parking space as well.
Are you referring to this one I'm hovering over, Mr. Huffine?
Yes, sir. That looks like an area we could use, but I don't know what's existing in that location.
And
Still pecan tree in there somewhere.
if I'm not mistaken, I believe during TRC review, there was some discussion of this piece right here, correct, Jason? Josh had some comment. I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Is there a 35-foot site triangle there that opposes the intersection maybe that we're not aware of?
Josh was concerned about stem length, and what he basically fell upon was for the shorter stem length of the example on the right, he wanted explicit signage added just to help people understand how to navigate the park.
All right, let's leave that and then look at omitting 2 of the accessible spaces and making those a standard space. Because we'd still be less than 50 spaces. We could have 2 accessible spaces.
We have no compact space.
So we'd be so close to approaching 1 parking space per bedroom. And if you look at student housing, if you look at very dense urban housing, you target that 1 car per bedroom on a rental community. That's all I had on the parking. I have a couple other items, but I'll wait for my turn. But that's how I was arriving at the numbers.
That with that condition, to squeeze in 2 more spaces, it makes some of those compact spaces, then we'd be in good shape.
If
Okay.
he was trying to achieve 1 unit.
Yeah, if we're trying to get to 1, or at least it's
One per
precedent's already been set.
Per bedroom.
Right. Cameron, is there, I don't think it is, but I want to ask you, the requirement on the setback for the parking lot curve?
No,
can-
sir.
Can they take it to the property line?
It'd be
The only specific that I've seen in regards to concrete going to the property line is in industrial zoned area where there's a 10-foot required setback for that. According to what it says in our table, height, area, yard requirements, there's nothing of the like. So you could interpret that to be that you could take it to the property line, especially in this aspect, if that's something they were looking to site plan specific condition for.
There are other parking lots in town with the curb is right up to the parking lot.
I was almost sure it was, but I was just thinking that if took it 6 more feet there, that they could gain on each side, you could get another space on each side. In addition, I mean, that's something that I guess as engineer could look at, but I certainly, I think there's room there to get some more spaces, even if it's in between the 2 buildings. That's 44 feet from front to front or back to back, however you want to describe it. there's some room there that he could get some more spaces in there. And that he could meet this parking requirement.
Of one per bedroom.
Well, he's gonna meet that very easily by how we're discussing this right here. I think he could meet that very easily. But I think if he utilized that top space there, he could gain at least probably 6 more spaces. I mean, maybe even more, but I think that's 6 at the minimum.
Hopefully we get to it, so.
No, I think it's a great project. I think it's a great project for that area. And it can do nothing more than enhance everybody's property there. The big thing is that the people being a property owner of multifamily and not having enough parking spaces, I know what it's going to create. And somebody's got to deal with it. And Jason will be dealing with it. His HOA will be dealing with it. And the city will be getting numerous calls and referring them back to Jason.
Find a parking place to everybody then, would be that.
That would be the main, if you could assign the parking places to the units and tow and enforced by the HOA, all that may eliminate a lot of the problems, but let's just say that you're there living there and you got a little small party and the people didn't heed to what you say about parking in the city lot, and you come over and the first thing you do, they take up 3 of someone's spaces that live there. They're gonna be the 3 people that's calling. They can't get a parking spot in their own.
Where am I gonna park my boat, my jet skis, my camper?
Well, that'll be handled by the HOA, I'm sure. Yes.
Yeah, it occurs to me that this type of what we're seeing here, that, maybe there is some additional areas where we can eke out some more spaces. And like I said, certainly we can go back and talk with the designer, talk with Josh, see what was going on in that lower curb area. But I think what we're coming up on here is sort of grappling with what is the prevailing priority and goal? Is it to preserve some green space and have some trees and keep this looking like the rest of the area that it's in? Or is it to, we've all been in those areas of downtown where it's literally, edge to edge impervious surface with the building popping out of concrete, so I think we were trying to balance that. And one thing that occurs to me is that if it turns out that you're right, and this is a headache and Jason was too idealistic and too aspirational, the things you're talking about doing can be fixed, after the fact. We can go in and expand that parking lot and restripe it. That's not that ship won't sail with this. Those are things, like you said, that if it just becomes too much of a headache for the landlord, and that's a problem he'd be motivated to solve. Because again, that's going to manifest in tenants, in occupancy. That's something that is easily corrected if it turns out that, people aren't as urban ready as we think they are. So I just offer that, but I do think we're coming up against a conflict in, do we want green space? Do we want to preserve some trees and some openings for that to look organic and natural, or do we just want to max out the impervious surface?
Excuse me, how wide's the compact space?
I believe the compact space is 9 feet wide. Is that right? Or is the standards 9, compacts?
So standard would be 9. We could go as low as 7.5, actually.
Okay, because these are all 9, so. Add those 2 spaces and stripe it for 38 cars, for 40 cars.
Perhaps the condition would be to park 1 space per bedroom for this particular case.
Okay.
Since we are speaking about conditional zoning and there's an opportunity for give and take, we would like to talk about some trees in front of Miss Sherry's yard a little later in the discussion. I also have a question about the fence along the north. And I think we'd be giving a little bit to Mr. Wooten's concerns if we're obviously not going to be finding 57 parking spaces on this property, but we could target a very meaningful rate of 1 space per bedroom.
38 spaces there, yeah.
Which is, it's just a discussion we can certainly have and move this forward to the next.
That's fine.
Mr. Hopkins, you were the engineer on Mayor's project. In the discussion, I don't recall what was talked about concerning the parking. My computer's died. I can't pull that back. I don't remember us discussing a shortage.
I don't really remember either. I remember being, 2 units had the provision for 3 cars. Remember 1.5 spaces maybe per unit, which was an attempt at trying to reach what the ordinance said it, if it was just a straight zoning.
Yes.
We could look at the minutes and
General.
see exactly.
Eric, I think you may have asked. Did we talk about using that public lot right next to it? Yeah. What was the discussion on that?
Yeah,
What was the?
I made a motion that do not have gates there to the front doors for all the houses. Because I assumed that the front was going to be facing the parking lot instead of the front, instead of the back of the apartments.
Remember the gates to the parking lot?
So
Was that for using the parking lot?
the argument was with the 3 spaces underneath 2 of the buildings or one of the buildings. There was enough places for almost 1 car per unit inside the lot, so they could park in the gate inside the corral at night. But the city parking lot was still, even though there's no overnight parking. Not many lots you go by, the city always doesn't have somebody in it overnight. So,
So the discussion ended with that they could not use the city lot for overnight parking?
now, if I remember that the ordinance, the city said, you can't park the lot overnight. But, and there was enough parking places for each unit to have a space
For
or,
code?
no, not 1.5.
Inside the
Yeah,
gates was it
inside
for
the
code?
gate. There were enough for,
Could we go back and look at the plan maybe to try to answer Mr. Weeks? I frankly don't remember.
I might be able to pull it up, but I mean, you also have to take into account, there was a lot more going into the parking in that area because it wasn't just all residential. There was commercial aspects of it as well that were being taken into account. So it's kind of hard to compare something in this aspect when you're looking at strictly residential parking issue here, and now you have mixed use commercial residential aspect here too.
I remember that for the commercial aspect, the use of the public parking was going to be allowed,
Yeah.
but as I recall, the overnight parking was disallowed. That's correct?
I don't remember the overnight parking was disallowed at all. It's a public, the city parking lot there was, there's no requirements, no limitations on how long you can stay there.
I'm trying to get a feel for,
Right.
what we were looking at, if there was some condition that went along with that request, what the background was on that. So I'm trying to refresh my memory of what you were speaking about concerning the per unit.
Mhm.
Can we go back and take a look at that? Do you have that handy?
But this, the minutes from that we just approved were from the last planning board meeting that you all discussed.
Like I said, my computer's down.
Motion, Chrisman moved to approve with the condition of using architect's rendering A only along with city parking signage on the fence adjacent to the development to discourage overnight guest parking and to add mirror and signage warning exiting motorists of pedestrians in the crosswalk.
and that was voted down.
Correct, motion failed. Then you, Mr. Wooten, moved to approve with the condition that a developer adds a convex mirror and signage at the Elm exit street, warning motorists and pedestrians. Then Chair Ward reopened it back up, had some further discussion. That failed again. You moved to approve with the condition that developer adds a convex mirror at the exit of Elm Street. Well, basically the same thing, and it finally got voted approved, and then Mr. Huffine joined the meeting back. There was a lot of bouncing around. It sounded like, I'm glad I wasn't part of that one.
Ms. Hovland.
I was just gonna offer, you also have the downtown resident parking program that the police department administers. So I think you already have a good, infrastructure in place to be the arbiter of when it's appropriate for downtown residents to be able to park overnight in certain places. So there's a process in place for that we would utilize if allowed to go forward this way.
Thank you. That, the parking is just the only caveat of the issue. It's a great project. I don't have anything against it. I think it's gonna be a good community building project there. But look at the proposed, well, the project that we approved on Hardin Street, right beside the mini market. It's a
Oh,
wet event
Yeah,
center.
the Grand Mill.
Graham Mill, there's no parking there. She has no parking and I hear it every day and I hear it from business owners there and I hear it from city staff, people talking about the complaints that they're getting there based on her not having parking. Different. Mr. Cox has parking at his location. But it's just, it's gonna be an adjustment and we either gotta accept it and go on with it or put some conditions on it or let the council decide, but I think he's presented an overall good project without the parking. I don't know how to address it any other way than either we can put the condition on it that he meet the parking requirement and take a vote and see how it goes and move forward. I don't want to hold him up any further. That he's been working on this project for a year now, I know. And it's time that we take some type of action.
I have no problem with it, if we get, one parking place per bedroom. Whether it's restriping, whether it's adding the 2 spaces by the dumpster and eliminating 2 of the, accessible parking places. And having a compact lot or a compact side of a lot. If we get 38 parking places, I'd be just happy as I could be.
But it has 38 right now. One thing I will suggest, if you are gonna make a motion to have that condition to meet that 1 required per space, to possibly include that could be approved at the technical review committee level. So that with the addition of parking spaces, it doesn't have to come back in front of y'all if it were to cause some sort of amendment to come back forward.
All right, good call.
Any further discussion, Mr. Boney?
Well, I'm thinking Mr. Crispin's, if I understood it right. So you're saying 48 spaces, 1 per bedroom?
There are 38 units.
There's
there.
38 units.
10 of them have 2 bedrooms.
Are 48.
Yeah.
Ten of them have 2 bedrooms.
Oh, okay.
And so
Oh, no,
that's
yeah, that, I,
the site for what you were
Yeah.
proposing.
thank you for catching on that, yes.
There's 28 1-bedrooms
And-
and there's
and 10
10
twos.
2-bedrooms.
So they're meeting the 1 parking space per unit
Yeah,
right now.
They're
Yeah,
meeting
one
that.
parking space per unit.
Right.
They're
Should
meeting
be
that.
30.
But I thought.
Yeah, I-
Per bedroom.
I was,
Yes.
thank you for catching that.
And they,
It's 1 per unit.
well, they're,
That's what you're proposing instead, 1 per.
Yeah, 1 per unit.
Well, then,
but they're
Wait.
meeting
are
the bedroom, 1 per bedroom. They're meeting 38, there's 38 bedrooms total. There is
43 bedrooms.
28, no, there's 28
48
1-bedrooms and 10 2-bedrooms. 28 and 10, my math is 38.
And that's the 1 per unit.
10 has 2 bedrooms.
So that's 20 bedrooms.
That's
Yeah,
20
Trey,
bedrooms.
you're correct.
That's 20 bedrooms.
Yeah, that's 20. You're correct.
Right.
You're correct. 20, 30, that's 48. You're correct.
We've been talking about parking too long. This guy.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
We've been on parking too long for a great project.
If we get 1 parking space per unit.
Any further discussion?
Okay, let's clarify.
Right, you just go
One
back.
last time, please.
Right, it's
The,
go-
the project meets and exceeds well a parking rate of 1 per unit. Do we want to condition this, since we believe it is achievable, to have 1 parking space per bedroom? That's the condition we need to decide to craft or not. The other item is the discussion of the fence along the boundary of property that's yet to be developed, whether that's an opaque fence, is that a condition that we would like to see as a boundary buffer of some type, since we're 6 feet off the line? I just recall the same precedent, Mr. Wooten and I are talking back and forth about a wall and a division, or a fence and a division may be helpful. It may be something very simple that the property owner can do. It's certainly on my mind, especially after listening to Miss Sherry speak about the streetscape in front of her house. I looked at the trees that she sees from her front porch, and this plan will not allow those trees to be saved. So anything we can do to help that, I think we should be able to ask that question. That's all I have.
Is that we've already got a wooden fence on the,
It's on the adjoiner.
yeah.
So if I'm correct, they were planning on putting a fence in right here and in this area, but we're leaving this one open because this is vacant land right here, and the thought process, and correct me if I'm wrong, is there's no need to buffer anything that's not there, and if something were to come, then that's when they would put it in. I'm not entirely sure about this area though, but I know for a fact this is the one that you're referring to, Mr. Huffine, right? This specific area right here.
I'm just concerned entirely. We have a 6'1", basically operational setback to the north. And then if you'll pan to the east, we have a fence that's owned by the adjoiner and a driveway that encroaches. So we have no, and we have 5.25 feet operationally from the back of that parking lot. So it's either going to be grass or it's going to be a fence. That's the question.
Vacant partial, the biggest partial.
You could just condition that all abutting except for the street yard be covered by 6-foot opaque screen fence and kind of go from there. If that's what we were looking for to kind of put that in, is that what you're kind of referring to?
And is it even necessary with their future plans out there that we don't know about or may not be aware of?
And that's kind of up
That
for
should
y'all
be
to
no bearing on the future plans out there. But Mr. Smith is sitting right back here, who owns the large parcel right there. And he's not requesting a fence, who owns that parcel. So
then I lose the idea about the fence.
no, I'm just saying it's not we can't think about in what future would be there. I guess of what somebody may want in the future. If you want it, you just need to say you want it. And if not, we just need to move forward, I would think.
Question for Mr. Huffines. Back to parking. How many parking spots did you find?
I can find 45. And that's without using any compact dimensions. That's standard spaces.
I would be comfortable with the condition that he finds at least 45 parking spots for this.
And without the benefit of the city engineer's input, that council may be aware of, there is one space in question at the intersection of the southwest corner that I may be in error counting due to some kind of physical constraints that I don't know about. 44 may be more appropriate.
I feel comfortable with 44.
I would feel more comfortable with that too.
Okay.
42 now, as presented.
Right.
So you would add 2 more.
For non-handicap accessible parking spaces, I think that what they're referring to. So they have the 38 non-handicap spaces, and Mr. Huffine believes he can add in up to the 44, not including the handicap spaces. Is that correct, sir?
I think that's right. So close.
But I thought at one point we were subtracting something from the handicap.
Yeah,
There are currently 4 handicap spaces on the plan. Removing 2 of those would free up additional spaces. not in an inaccessible way. Would not necessarily be required to provide accessible spaces. Add 3, 2 to the north, and a possible 1 to the southwest. Then we should arrive at 45 to 44 spaces.
That's not even using compact spaces. Okay. So close.
Public comment still open.
Yes. I mean, no, sir, public, our comments, the discussion here.
Discussion is here. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you close.
Anything further?
To the extent that,
It-
we would have to agree and voluntarily offering additional conditions, I do have a request about that discussion.
Let me open the public comments back. Come on back up.
Think we can get to where y'all want to be, but would prefer a formula type condition, like you were talking about earlier, for the one spot per bedroom, as opposed to a, hard and fast number, say 45, because that allows us to continue to ebb and flow with the site as it changes, knowing that there's a formula bar we have to get to, as opposed to 45 could become arbitrary if things change internally to the site. So I would rather meet a formula than a finite number. Thank you.
We'll close the public comment. Any,
Said comment about the precedent. I can't verify that in that memory. So it's, I'm going to say, I'm going to discount that for the moment. I still think that we would be setting a precedent. The rest of the project, love it. That one thing, I don't think.
like, any further?
I have no trouble with the parking as it is.
Christmas, last and final thoughts.
My eyes have glazed over. We've got 38 units, we've got 40. Right now, we've got 42 parking places. Right? I have no problem.
Popeyes?
I have no comment.
Haley? No comment. All right, then I will entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion. We approve the project as presented. It meets the Graham 2035 comprehensive plan, policies 4.3.1, land use problem patterns, policy 5.1.2, variety of ownership opportunities, and 5.2.1. And this is the big one, diverse neighborhoods, encourage a mix of housing within types within Graham. So I think it's an excellent project. I'll make that motion.
Mr. Chrisman, I'd like to ask you if you would reconsider
We'll be glad to reconsider anything you think.
thought process of the parking spaces. I think that's gonna be an important factor amongst this board, and when it gets to council too, I feel like that it's gonna be a important factor. Would you like to consider any type of number other than as presented?
I could go 44 spaces.
Any-
Whether restriping or adding asphalt.
Any further discussion from anyone else on the board concerning his reconsideration?
I'll be glad to help you with that. If you look at a formula rate of 9 spaces per 10 bedrooms, it achieves the same mathematics. A counselor's looking for a formula-based condition. So 9 spaces per 10 bedrooms would be the way to mathematically craft that condition for the same end result.
Okay. I'd like to withdraw my motion and start all over. I'd like to make a motion. We accept the plan as presented with the condition of 9
Parking space.
9 parking spaces per every 10 bedrooms in the project. It's in conformity with the Graham 2035 comprehensive plan. The applicable policies are 4.3.1, land use patterns, 5.1.2, variety of ownership opportunities, and 5.2.1, diverse neighborhoods. And that the artist rendition and the plan certainly represents a diverse neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Chrisman. I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Bass. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
You want to poll the board?
I will poll the board, but the city clerk said that she got it. Thank you. Cameron, let's move on. It's getting late.
Yes, sir. No worries. I will present the last item here. Item number C is a request to rezone 0.25 acres of property from R7 high density residential to B2 general business for the purpose of utilizing the existing home structure as a hair salon. The entirety of this block is zone R7, and this request would allow for all B2 permitted uses to utilize the property. The future land use plan notes that supporting uses in the downtown residential zone supports the uses of neighborhood-oriented commercial facilities. So the request as presented coincides with both the future land use plan and our development ordinance. And that is all I have, sir.
Thank you.
James D. Norris Jr., address 889 South Murray Drive in Graham. I own the property on 300 Elm Street, East Elm Street. And this is my daughter Brooke Elizabeth Norris, trying to turn it into esthetician's place business where she works on women's facials and possibly a couple of hair people in there to fix hair. Just want to see if we could move forward to putting this into B2, which I was told would fit the best part for this business, but I've also been told O and I. All three partials on all three corners of East Elm Street is already zoned commercial, other than this one corner where the resident of 300 is. It's R7. I've had James Fogelman, the engineer, draw a set of plans up on this particular piece of property, and we, trying to move forward with it. It is planning with approved.
Are you planning on using the same structure there?
Yes.
Are you talking about
No,
tearing it down
we're
completely,
gonna use the structure that's there, sir.
the residential house?
Yes, sir.
Burke used to live. What's your name again, please?
James Norris.
Norris.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Norris, I realize you're looking for a zone B2. The R7 lot to the south of that. The big R7 lot is owned by the mayor.
Right.
And then there's a little B3 lot is also owned by the mayor on that lot.
Yes, sir.
Had you thought about maybe trying to request a B3 zone, which is a neighborhood business?
Mr. Christmas, I've had so much flack out here on
Yeah.
the street from people telling me that there's so many different things could be put in a B3 and then
Yeah.
there's B2. And then I was even told day before yesterday that should probably ask for O and I. And I really, I don't know what to do. I mean, I've heard so much stuff. Cameron made the suggestion of a B3. That's what I presented. Then I come back and I wanted to change it to a B2. Like I said, I'm just all over the board. I'll do whatever the city requests or give me.
Then I'd like to ask Mr. West a question then. Would a hair salon be allowed in a B3 neighborhood business zoning?
Just had it pulled up too. Let's see.
And the reason I'm asking that is that since there's already a B3 abutting that lot and others are R7s,
Right.
that would minimize the impact of, you got a different zone
Right.
against my property.
Yes.
You know, that property's been vacant since, I don't know, 15 years, I guess. Um, um, maybe I should say something here too, because Mr. Boney brought it forward last time. We talked about the mayor's property on the Marshall and Elm Street. My brother owns that B2 directly across Melville Street, but he doesn't practice there anymore. And got back to Springs, he doesn't really care.
Mr. Crispin, to answer your question, the uses of barber shop, beauty shop, and nail salons are permitted in the B3, B2, and B1 zoning district,
Okay.
as well as the light industrial district. It is not approvable in the O&I district, however.
Okay, and I was just trying to make it,
I appreciate
make it easy.
Yes.
That would remove an objection to having a different zone, that one that's already there.
Right.
Is the
Yes,
B3.
I understand. Yes.
That B3 lot that, hadn't it been changed, reverted back to R7?
Not that I've seen.
It's residential right now, someone's living there.
Yeah, just an apartment right now.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, single-family dwellings are permitted in the B3 zoning district as well, so that wouldn't be anything against our zoning ordinance. Let me just double check and make sure. Yeah, B3 permits for single-family detached dwellings, so even if it was zone B3, it wouldn't matter if anybody was living there or not. I don't know what the intention was originally to rezone it to B3 in that area. It's
The real
probably,
estate office.
yeah, it
Used to
probably
be a-
happened so long
Years
ago.
ago, I was told it used to be a laundromat back in the day. That little building was. I mean, back in the 50s, what I was told.
But the request
Is
is
for
for,
B2.
for B2.
Correct, yes, sir.
So we can't amend his request to B3 or anything
Not
without
that-
re-advertising.
Yeah, it'd have to be withdrawn and brought back in front next month.
But directly across the street, I'm looking at O&I.
Correct.
Which is on the corner. So really nothing that is east of Melville Street, other than that one parcel down there is B3 and the O&I on the corner.
Correct, yes, sir. Everything else is surrounded by R7, as I was mentioning in the staff report.
Well, on a B2 zoning, couldn't you put a car wash on that lot?
Good question. Let's find out. There's a lot of different things that you can put in both the B2 and B3 zoning district. It's, it's almost like you're battling the best of both. So yeah, I mean, you could put in a car wash, including self-service in the B2. You can put it in B3 as well through a special use permit. So it wouldn't quit somebody or prevent somebody from presenting the idea of it. You could go on and on. I mean, I guess billiards hall, bingo games, bowling alleys are permitted in the B2, not in the B3. There's some certain specific ones, bars, B2, not in the B3. Banquet halls, B2, not in the B3. That's just looking up the kind of top of the list right here. So there's definitely differences between both of them, but you're going to come into some discrepancies when you blanket rezone something either way. I mean, we've had this discussion in the past, I believe, as well as, once we rezone this piece of property, we're opening ourselves to a lot of different options here that could be placed here. I don't know how we kind of get over that hump, or what it looks like on the development side of it to try and, push these things through. But at the end of the day, it's kind of up to you all. It's your decision to make the recommendation moving forward and ultimately city council to approve or deny.
Well, we could, technically a convenience store or gas pumps could go there if it was approved B2.
Talking about convenience stores or gas stations. Yes, sir. B3 would be able approval for a convenience store with gasoline pumps and without gasoline pumps.
Three or B2?
Both of them. They're
Both
both
of 'em.
approved in the areas.
Mr. Chairman, does the applicant have the option, as long as he's going down in the requirements to modify? Could he not ask for a conditional either B2, I'm just listening from your either B2 or B3, specifying that it's for a hair and nail operation?
I think we'd still be in the same situation of having to withdraw the current application and send in a new one. Yes, you could submit a conditional rezoning where the condition is this facility is going to be used for a hair salon. that would have to go back in front and be advertised also with.
My understanding is as long as you're coming down from what was advertised, it's allowed, you can't expand. So that in other words, if it was advertised as a B2 here for the city council.
Yes, sir.
You can come in with something less, either B3 or B2, but with conditional, is my understanding that you don't.
I'm not sure, Mr. Bonner. I'd have to ask. the
I'm not
City attorney.
really sure off the top of my head either. And of course, we don't have the attorney available at the planning board meetings as well. I don't know if I'm in a position, I mean, I can sit here, y'all please continue to discuss, ask any questions. I'll try and look through our ordinance and see if there's anything considering. I mean, it could be in state statute as well. You've been in the news industry. I'm sure you've dealt with one or two on the occasion, but I don't know if it's anything specific to the state or specific to Graham in particular. So I'll have to look into it. I'm sorry.
I have some concern dropping a B2 right in the middle of highly R7, everything around it's R7, and we're gonna drop a B2 business in there when we can achieve the same thing that Mr. Norris is asking for without changing the zoning to B2.
Can you do a special use permit?
Well, conditional residential CR, you could do that, which would allow her to do what you're asking for. And then what would happen is if she ever closed up or the property ever changed hand, it would go back straight to R7 residential.
Right.
Yeah, but it's definitely achievable.
Like
that
but
I'm comfortable with that option.
But we can't do it with the way it come in here with the B2, I don't think, and I don't think we can get no city attorney on the phone tonight to ask him.
I don't know if I'd be able to get a hold of Mr. Brian or Mr. Bob.
Well, if you give me the numbers, I'll call them.
Yeah, unfortunately, I believe Mr. Ward has, he has COVID, so I don't know if we'd be able to get up with him regardless, but, yeah, if Mr. Coleman told me he had, Mr. Ward had COVID on Monday, so I hope he's not at the city council meeting tonight. Or
you were talking about the B2 and B3. Don't either way the zoning, if say somebody wanted to bring a convenience store there, wouldn't they have to meet certain criteria? I mean, they just couldn't go over there and just start putting a new store up.
No,
Wouldn't they have to meet the
setbacks, and that's it.
That's right. All
Yeah.
the setbacks. I mean, they wouldn't have to deal with the
Yeah, if you
state
don't
with
mind.
the in-ground tanks.
Yeah.
That's outside of us and
Oh, yeah, okay.
what we can, that's something that they would have to get a state
Don't you
permit
have to
for.
have a certain amount of square footage?
As long as the building meets the setbacks, whatever size that may be,
Right.
and he can get it on that lot, then if it's zone B2, he don't have to come before us and ask.
Yes.
Yeah.
understand.
But a conditional residential, a CR,
A CR.
then you could
Yes.
request want a conditional rezoning for this residential lot for a hair salon.
Hair salon, esthetician, nails, and it
Well,
would
I
fit
mean-
in that little picture.
You know, later on, I'm just saying, you don't know what's gonna happen in the future. I mean, but I was trying to get the piece of property where it could possibly be a place for a lawyer. You know what I'm saying? You could be rented out for something else other than just hair,
Mhm.
if it come down to it. You know what I'm saying? That's the reason I was doing it. I wasn't trying to fix it, to make a convenience store or anything like that,
Then it may be something that Cameron needs to sit down and talk with you about, because I think maybe O&I may,
But he said, oh, and I won't let you do
Yeah,
beauty.
they won't, the hair salon is not an approvable use in the O&I district, according to it. I'm reading through the ordinance right now. And it's mentioning something about SL 2019-111, Part 1. An applicant may not apply for downsizing of a third-party property. The local government may initiate a downsizing of property owned by other parties. I don't know exactly what that refers to, but that's inside of our city ordinance.
well, he's the owner of the property, so he's not a
That's
third
what I'm
party.
thinking as well. What's he saying? Oh, it said B2. Hey, what's going on, Aaron?
Almost got away.
All right. Somebody gonna get cut.
Oh, I hope so. It's been fun. I appreciate it. It's advertised for B2. We need to know what exactly that's over to people.
Thank you for that information, Mr. Bowman.
Yeah, I just don't know. I don't know if it'd be in the second quarter, if it'd be what's sent over to the newspaper. Well, here's the thing, is the ad hasn't even been sent over to the paper yet, because we haven't, set the public, or had the public hearing for city council.
That's the case, then we can.
With an E.
Yes.
Have living facilities there. Land use.
Magnolia Beauty Studios. Gonna be the name of it.
Internet.
On here, I can't figure out the number.
Oh. Just as an aside, while we're waiting for them to get
Yeah.
through,
Yes,
the people that used to live there,
yes,
Morris and Elizabeth Burke,
right.
way back when.
Oh, yeah.
And she was a nurse, and I don't know what Mr. Burke did, but he farmed a lot right across Marshall Street where the South Court drug is. That was his garden plot.
Well, I know your father gave me plenty of penicillin shots over there
And
across the street.
Miss Burke was his nurse, and he liked her. She was a good nurse because she could sharpen a needle. It was good, and the needle was about that size.
So you're saying your brother is the one across the street, Dr. Chrisman over there? That was your
Yeah,
brother?
that's my brother. Yeah.
Your father's office across, used to be the old Dr. Chrisman's office.
It used to be a Bob Wright drugstore.
Who
No.
was the Chrisman on the corner?
That was my father.
That was your
But
father?
he moved from there. He moved from Wright Drugstore
Yeah,
when Curtis Wright owned it, and Larry McAllister.
Yeah.
He moved down because it's hard for patients to get upstairs.
right. Well, when he was there on that corner, I used to go there when I was this age.
Oh, yeah.
And the famous thing back in the day was penicillin.
Oh, yeah.
That's-
Miracle drug.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so upon discussion with the assistant city manager, we have some avenues of moving this thing forward. Unfortunately, it may take a little month break in order to get it back in front of planning board and then over to city council. One option is withdrawing the application, coming back next month with either a conditional rezoning or a B3 rezoning, which in the meantime, between now and then for the application, I can sit down with you, Mr. Norris, and we'll talk about your options and weigh both of those and kind of push you to that area of what you want to do.
Yes.
The other one could be tabling it and us seeking advice from the legal folks if we have the authority to recommend you moving it from B3 to conditional rezoning, but in that aspect, we'd have to have the conditions along with the recommendation over to city council. So regardless, you have that month break in between, which is unfortunate, and I do apologize because I know you want to get this stuff taken care of, and we are as well. But we just kind of have to make sure that you're in the best position here to get your stuff approved. With that being said, if you'd like to withdraw it, that's definitely up in the air that you could do, and it'd be taken off the city council agenda for next month. And we'd come back with planning board next month with either the B3 or the conditional rezoning, or we table it here, seek legal advice on if we can even push this thing forward with the changing, and then kind of go from there. So it's kind of whichever one you'd like to move forward with.
But do I have to resubmit new fees and all that too?
No, sir. I'm not gonna make you do all that. So we'll kind of have that aspect of it since you kind of got all this stuff taken care of. Well, I'll have to ask and make sure, but as of right now, I don't think that we'll make you required to do them.
So we come back in 30 days before the planning again.
Yes, sir.
And then
He's gonna
like
withdraw.
have this worked out with the B3 or whatever.
We'll have a discussion. We'll kind of see what's the best movement from there.
Wait just a minute. Mr. Tupper.
If I may just discuss amongst the board in front of the petitioner, I'd just like for everyone to be aware that based on the 1,400 square foot building that I believe occupies the property and the intention of that building to be reused as an office, a hair salon, esthetician, nails, etc., then the table of permitted uses and the parking requirements for that require parking spaces, one space every 200 square feet. So for a 1,400 square foot general use business, you'd need to have at least 7 parking spaces. One of those would have to be accessible and paved. And you would have to be able to access that from the building. It went to an office similar to an attorney, which was mentioned here, that space would become a low volume use and it may be as high as 1 space per 600 square feet. Either way, you would still have that paved accessible space. And then the conditional business or the conditional idea, I think, gives everyone a considerable amount of comfort when moving a zoning district outside of anything that's contiguous to it, especially in an area surrounded by residential. And having that conditional avenue to work with city staff on gives us a significant easier review and look process.
Yes.
I will note, sorry, Chair Ward, but in regards to non-residential parking, it's all specific to the maximum number of required off-street parking. So we have a ceiling of what you just listed is the max amount of parking they will have to provide. They could easily go below that minimum, but I see what you were kind of getting towards is that with the conditional route, we could talk about that a little bit further. But I just wanted to kind of clarify that.
In the permitted table of uses, I didn't see hair salon or esthetician. What was you grouping that with?
It's under barber shop. It's where is it? Barber shop, beauty shop, nail salon. So beauty shop, nail salon, barber shop kind of takes into that hair salon aspect that I was kind of referring to. I didn't know anything about the latter.
Yeah, that's. So Jimmy, I think probably your best thing would be tonight is to withdraw it and meet back with Cameron and
Yes.
then that way we don't rule on it or anything and you don't have no time
Right.
to wait to come back into next month, maybe if y'all can get it all done. But the conditional residential is probably the best thing to look at there because it's, I mean, you're talking about popping a B2 or B3 in the middle of a residential section. I don't know how this board stands, but I know it's probably gonna be a tough road to get that, but a conditional residential could achieve what you're trying to do.
And would it be conditional residential or would it be conditional business that he'd have to go through?
I would say you can ask Bob and him, but I think he can do conditional residential there. It's a house, it's a residential house. He's not building a new structure.
But it's gonna be for,
But it just reverts back to its normal use if he ever stops using it or transfers ownership,
fair enough, runs with the land.
runs with the land.
Like Mr. Christmas said, you got a B3 in that same block, so. It ain't like you're sticking something totally different like a B2, but you know what I'm saying?
I think that
I'll
if-
do whatever.
I think that if you sit down and talk to him and y'all look at the overall picture of B2, B3, B1, all of that, there's so many things that could go there that potentially you wouldn't want to see in a residential section to begin with. So I don't know how favorable it would be towards you to try that. You're welcome to try anything.
Right. I mean, I need some advice and suggestions.
He's the man. He'll steer you in the right direction.
We'll just withdraw and then come back next month.
We have to y'all have to make a recommendation and then he'll have to submit to me that he'll like to withdraw. So is that correct in lines with what y'all think? I don't know if he can withdraw it here at the meeting or not.
No, he can withdraw it right here.
Okay.
We've had him withdraw before. We'll make the recommendation, but he can withdraw if he'd like.
I'm just getting my feet wet here, just making sure, asking some
Yeah,
questions.
he can withdraw.
Perfect. Just making sure.
And then we take no action.
I make a motion to recommend that he withdraw.
The UDO, the development ordinance is out on the website, city website.
Right.
You may have already been there. But it'll put you to sleep, so.
And it does.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, I'm a contractor slash brick mason. I'm not an engineer and I'm not a lawyer, so we'll go to sleep.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time.
Yes, sir.
All right, Cameron, let's move to the next item.
I believe that is it.
All right, any new business that wasn't on the agenda, any item not on the agenda that anyone would like to talk about?
I don't know.
Public comment?
Public comment, whatever you want to call it.
He's the only public left in here, I believe, so.
Was,
I would like to comment, that we had a public comment that used the word de minimis in front of us.
I heard that. Mr. Boney, did you come to talk?
No, sir.
Okay,
Use the word de minimis.
thank you.
Make sure you get that in the minutes as well, so that was you. The minimus.
So Cameron, I know that we've talked about it in the past and council has authorized, I reckon, approval of city attorney to our access if we need them. No one would ever knew that we would need them, but how about just broaching that question with them? If maybe if we have a question in the future, if we could have a conversation with them during the meeting
Yes, sir.
by phone. I don't know that you legally can do that, but they will be able to tell us.
Yeah, I don't know either, especially with how meetings are advertised. I don't know when you extend past that, you break that fourth wall of making the phone call. I mean, even me talking to Aaron tonight could have broke through that as well, but
And it may be that we have to
Yeah.
put it on speaker and for the minutes so it can all be heard to everybody that's present.
yes, sir.
It may-
Especially when it comes to legal advice, but I guess when it comes to zoning, it may fall on some different parameters. But I'll raise it to administration tomorrow and ask.
Thank you.
Because I know there was the concerns with the special use permit part
Special
as
use
well.
permits, right.
So wanting to take that care out with the Board of Adjustment, but
All right. With no other business, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we close the meeting.
Anybody want to second it?
Sure.
No, we be
I'll
adjourned,
second it.
excuse me.
And Mr. Bailey seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I hope not.
hey,